YouTube is saying that we're live, so I think we're probably live, folks. I think that means that it might be time to start talking. Hopefully, people that are watching will type in the chat to tell us that we are live and that the feed is clean and that it's all going well. We are. You've checked. It's all good.
Yeah.
Right, excellent. So, welcome everybody to the very, very first episode of My Big Fat Mouth Live. I had this idea kind of out of my ass. I wanted to do something special for the 10th episode. I wanted to gather some other members of the community together for a lovely little chat. And so I just thought to myself, do you know what? This will probably be really good fun to do live. So here we are. Some of these faces you may recognize. I know one of them has appeared in a video recently. One of them has definitely been on the vodcast before. So folks, my lovely guests, why don't you take a minute to introduce yourselves, let everyone know who you are, and maybe a couple of words about yourself if that's the kind of thing you're into.
Who wants to go first?
I mean, you already started, so.
Okay, ladies first. Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Emma Partlow. You may know me from the Magic the Gathering side of things. So I cover budget modern for TCG Player Infinite. I have an article that comes out every Tuesday, and I also do a budget modern podcast. In my spare time, I really enjoy Warhammer, and I'm painting a load of Death Guard at the moment because they look really, really cool.
Yeah, they do. And absolutely crushing it, might I add.
Thanks.
Go on then, who's next? Take your pick.
Yeah, hi. I'm Victor Orstadius Consati, and I'm not on the internet, or I don't have an internet presence.
Hey, you stream, don't lie.
I used to quite a while ago now, but I've been in the Wholesome Degenerate community, as it's so finally named, for quite a long time now. I was modding on your Twitch channel before you stopped that, and now you also tricked me into starting Warhammer, so here we are.
I did somehow accidentally trick you into that. I don't quite know how that happened. Victor's a long-suffering friend of mine who has helped me out many times with various aspects of my career, and now he mods my Discord, and as he says, we did somehow manage to trick him into Warhammer. So the mystery person, who none of you will probably recognise, is the lovely chap in the top left. So why don't you take a second to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm David Inglis. I'm a former has-been / never was from the Magic community. I've played Warhammer since 4th edition, so far too long ago. I've dipped in and out, but now I guess I've decided to commit during COVID, which is probably the perfect time for a tabletop game.
I love this. He calls himself a has-been, probably never was in the Magic community. Didn't you captain Team UK at Worlds?
I didn't captain Team UK, but I was there.
You were on Team UK at Worlds. Okay, so probably a bit of a reach to call yourself a never was. He's got that pedigree. Okay, he's got that pedigree. Right, look, this is, we're doing this live. We Paint Minis is in the chat. Hello, buddy. Hello, thank you for tuning in. So, because we're doing this live, obviously, a lot of these sections are probably going to take a bit longer than usual, especially because there's 4 of us to answer all of them. So, I'm going to try my best now to not mess up this very delicate bit of technological transition work. We're going to go straight into our first section, which is where I ask, what have you been up to? So, what have you been up to, mate? What have you been up to? And we're back. Did that work? Did that actually work? Did it look good? I don't know. I have no idea. Hopefully I didn't completely mess that up.
Suspense.
Right, so I'll tell you what we're going to do. For the sake of making it look nice for the lovely people watching, what I'll do is I will ask each of you in the order that you appear on screen, and we'll catch up a little bit on what you've been doing hobby-wise, and then we'll finish on me, because that way I can go into the next section nice and easily. So, David, why don't you tell us first, what have you been up to hobby-wise, my friend? What have you been doing with yourself?
So, I've been writing lots of army lists for Harlequins, which sounds really weird to do, because they have about 2 units.
Yeah, like 3 models to choose from.
Yeah, it's tough, like working up which to out of 3.
Yeah.
I've been repainting my army because it was too chaotic, which again sounds weird for Harlequins.
No, they're totally chaos worshippers.
Oh, I know, I love me some chaos. 9th doesn't chaos. Unless you're Death Guard. But yeah, I've just been repainting some Harlequins in a nice scheme that I shared in the lovely Wholesome Degenerates. And yeah, that's been it really. Just repainted Harlequins.
That color scheme is actually, so I've never seen Harlequins approach that way before. What David did, I don't know whether you've got a photo and you can screen share. I don't know if that's a thing you're able to do. If you are at any point able to do that, you're more than welcome to do so, because all it's going to do is replace the viewer's view of your face with a view of your screen. So if you've got photos you want to show, just obviously show them that way. But basically, what David did was, it's primarily like a black and white scheme, which is with like flashes of red, and it's really reminiscent to me of like medieval house jester kind of fool sort of vibe. You know, like I think it was like the Jacobite era. Maybe, like I'm shit at history. I don't know.
Yeah,
where
Harlequins.
where like the court, the black, white, and red court jester was like a thing.
Ironically, Harley Quinn, the DC heroine, she also is in black, red, and white. So you got some DC nods there, accidentally, if you're into that.
Or was it accidentally?
Was it accidentally?
What was it? Yeah.
My initial plan for Harlequins was to paint I actually never thought I'd do a full army of Harlequins because I'm not a wonderfully talented painter, and I think Eldarin needs to look nice and clean. Yeah, no, I'm good at putting myself down, or bad. But anyway, the idea was to paint like a bunch in different like superhero schemes and villains. So I guess maybe it like came over from that. But actually, like, I really like the art on tarot cards. So I saw a deck was done like black and white, and that's where I took my inspiration from.
That's
like the full.
That's actually really, really clever. I'm a big fan of finding inspiration for your paint jobs from like things that you see around you. You know, from grabbing something that you see in real life and saying, yeah, I can turn this into a paint scheme and it'll be rad. In fact, at some point, that might be an idea for a fun community challenge. We're just wrapping up our first community contest over in the Wholesome Degenerates, where the challenge was just to paint something using one of my tutorials and to write a little bit about it. But for the next community challenge, maybe we'll have to do a paint a color scheme based on a real life object, something that you own, and see what crazy things people pick. Like, you know, we've got Space Marines painted in the style of a fucking shoe or something.
I want to see a Space Marine croc.
A Space Marine croc. It would have to be Alpha Legion, presumably.
Oh, for sure.
Because like Crocs are the most degenerate and untrustworthy shoes, so presumably.
Or you can go with the British faux pas of socks and sandals.
Oh.
I don't know how that would translate to Warhammer, but I imagine there is something there.
The white and beige.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like it could be a thing. Emma, why don't you go next? Tell us what you've been up to.
I'll be honest, I haven't done a huge amount as I liked because I've been quite busy with the whole Magic content and having a full-time job. However, I've taken a few days off work, so come this weekend I will be doing some kit bashing. So at the moment I am kit bashing Death Guard Plague Marines with Putrid Blight Kings from Age of Sigmar and mashing them up together and making some really cool looking Nurgle models. I don't have any photos at the moment because I haven't had the time, but yeah, that's going to be my job for this weekend.
We did see in the Wholesome Degenerates Discord, we did see some of your early work on that, if I remember rightly, when you sort of first started pushing them together.
Yeah, it's like 2 weeks ago, so I've just been so busy. It's been on the back burner, but
more will come.
Get all them built. More will definitely come, but yeah, like the Putrid Blight Kings kit is just so nice. There's so many cool different things you can do, and you've got a couple of size in there, and you can just go really ham with it.
I can't help but notice Nurgle kits seem to just have like so much reuse value. Like every bit that you don't use in a Nurgle kit is usually perfect conversion fodder for another Nurgle kit.
This is it, and you get all the Nurgle iconography, especially with the Putrid Blight King stuff, so you can just repurpose it, and like eventually I'll get some vehicles for 40k, so that they all just look really nice decorated as well.
For sure.
That's one thing I love about Death Guard. They're all just really unique. No model is the same. It's not quite uniform. It's not like the Space Marines, for example. They've just got a lot of character to them.
Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? Like you can absolutely just take normal like Mark III or Mark IV Space Marines, paint them up as Death Guard Legionaries, and that will look fine. That will look good. You could even make that look amazing. But equally, you can go for this approach with Death Guard where there's literally never a repeat miniature, and for some reason it still looks cohesive because of all that ugliness. It just
it's
still
just
looks
really
like one
nice.
thing.
Yeah, so they're really unique, and I really enjoy painting more than playing. So the fact that you got this really unique looking army means I can spend a lot of time on it, and they'll look quite good.
Yeah,
and they'll all look different.
Sounds like a good
nice.
time. It sounds like a pretty good time. Fonzie, let's hear about what you've been up to, my friend, because I know you've been very, very busy.
Yeah, well, in a sort of semi-long-term sort of thing. So I picked the hobby up 2 months ago. Since then, I got 2K points of painted marines done. Lovely purple things.
I still can't believe you just smashed through a 2K army in 2 months. It's fucking
but I
ridiculous.
had a lot of spare time. Like I started a new job in the middle of September was last month. I know time. And like up until that point, I didn't have much to do. Like I had a few gap weeks there, so just like tried the hobby challenge thing and did stuff every day. And I think I averaged like 1 mini a day in the end.
That's good.
Yeah, I think.
Good rate.
Yeah, I think you did pretty good in the end. You know, all things considered, like when you bear in mind that you were picking it up from not brand new to it, but from like being extremely rusty with painting. You were kind of some of the planning you were doing on the fly with that army. I know, you know, like some of your unit choices and stuff you didn't make up front, did you? You kind of.
No, it was very like you mentioned earlier, like. Yeah, I was getting the start collecting box and then sitting in Battlescribe for ages. Like, I could have this unit or this unit.
We've got a Drawling in the chat saying hello. Everybody wave to Drawling. He's a regular in the Discord community who's been around for a long time. So
it sort of fluctuated and expanded. Like, oh, this is a cool kit. This is a cool kit.
Yeah, I know. Like, you fell in love with the Invicta pretty early on, didn't you? And then you happened to win one in a contest.
Yeah, I did.
Which was
the first.
Which was kind of lucky. He decided that he really loved one, and then he just went and summarily won one in one of my giveaways. Yeah. So there it is.
Oh, that's sick. The model's so nice.
It's really cool. It's really cool. I have to say, like the nipple Icarus Iron Hail stubbers, the little like rock hard nipple stubbers. They kind of offend me a little bit, but I'm also totally here for them at the same time.
Are you just jealous?
Yeah, I think so. Mostly because I have this problem where only one of my nipples is like always hard and the other one isn't. So I will never have the Iron Hail stubber nipples. It will never happen for me.
Yeah. You might not like it, but this is what peak perfection.
Beautiful. So I suppose I've got to bore you all with what I've been up to as well, which is kind of odd because, of course, due to YouTube, you kind of get to see what I've been up to. I only tend to film videos a week in advance at the most. But I have been working on a project that has really inspired me recently, which is converting and painting a Nurgle Demon Prince, which was kit bashed together with a Nurgle Plague Drone. And that also belongs to that gentleman over there, that one. But I tell you, that's been really interesting for me because it forced me to break out the modelling putties, the green stuff and the white milliput, and that's something I've not done for a really, really long time. So it ended up being this whole like creative dive into something that I have kind of missed doing, but have not had good purpose to do, I guess. Because like if I'm painting miniatures for myself, I have to be quick, you know, because I've got to like squeeze them in around commissions and shit like that. So I can't go like doing these, you know, 5 to 10 hour sculpt jobs on a miniature for myself. I can't justify that time.
And what I gather from you as well, like if you're gonna spend 10 hours on the like centerpiece of your army, from talking to you and stuff, like you'd rather spend that 10 hours on painting.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because, you know, at the end of the day, like it doesn't really matter that you get paid to do a thing or that it's your job. The time spent honing your craft and learning and improving is still it's still so valuable. In fact, if anything, maybe it's more valuable because, you know, if I spend 10 hours working really, really hard on a miniature for a centerpiece for my army, and I learn stuff and I level up as a result of that, that's also made me better at my job. So having a piece where I could really sort of do some of that learning and leveling up and really deep diving into skills and, you know, kind of analysing my own skill set and pushing myself in that sense was very, very interesting for me. Because a lot of the time, you know, on a commission, it is, you sort of have to play it safe. You have to do things that you know you're good at already. And this was a commission like from a friend who just says to me like, look, you know, I know you're not 100% comfortable with this, but I want you to do it. So just do it, get it done. And
Yeah, that's also my solution for converting Death Guard things. You ask this one.
I mean, look, I'm fine with it, but no, it was really, really good fun. It was very interesting. And the other thing that I finished up recently was a Primaris Chaplain, the one from the Indomitus box that everyone seems to overlook.
It's really nice. It's a lovely model.
Everyone likes the one in the big flowy jacket, but everyone sort of and everyone loves the Judicia. Everyone kind of overlooks the bald-headed guy with the faceplate, the one that looks like Kano from Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, I mean that's. Especially the head on that guy is so good.
It is literally Kano from Mortal Kombat, like entirely.
Now I have Mortal Kombat, the starting song in my head. You know, from the movie.
Right, shall we attempt to do this sexy scene transition thing again and make it work again and impress everybody with our incredible technical skills? Shall we go through into a new section?
Yeah.
Okay, so section 2 of the podcast is where I ask my guests, what are you high on right now? Yeah, what am I high on right now? And we are back. I think I've actually managed to do it properly twice in a row. I think that was smooth. So, folks, what are you high on right now? This is a section where we talk about the things that are making you buzz, the things that are making you happy, the things that are keeping you inspired in the hobby right now. So let's go back to David and tell me all about it. What's doing it for you right now?
Just generally how Ninth is as a game. Like, when I got back into Warhammer, it was in the Dark Age of 7th, as I believe it's referred to.
Yeah, people are not fans of 7th. It's quite an unpopular edition.
Yeah, last I played, it was 7, and then I quit.
Yeah, especially coming from like 4th and 5th, it was like I've come out of this time machine. It's like, yeah, this is how we play now. The things you don't pay for, you get for free, and it was the weirdest edition I ever thought. But like, because I'm quite competitive in my hobbies, Ninth seems to have like things for everyone. Like, I love the missions; they're really well written. Mm-hmm. The game just seems to really like be able to appeal to like most people now, which is awesome. Like, as someone who loves the creativity as well as being competitive, which is quite unusual, I find it's like Ninth as a whole just looks great. Like, their Games Workshop are big into feedback; they're willing to make changes. They've consulted very good tournament players, and the game just like. It feels good. Like, a big problem I had when I started playing again in 8th properly is when I was playing the quite popular Possess Bomb.
Yeah.
And like, when you're explaining it, it's like you're embarrassed to explain how your army works. It's like, I'm kind of cheating you. Like, you just don't get to play, and that's rubbish. Like, that's really bad from like a game design when like you're sitting down against your opponent who's new, and it's like, oh, actually, you don't get to do anything because here's a big load of rules. And Ninth seems to have very well stepped away from that, which is great. Like, that's good for the competitive player, the casual player, the in between. So
I get the feeling that with Ninth, a lot of the errata that we're going to see as the edition goes on is going to be more just like clarifications of stuff, things that have just been, you know, they need to kind of be made a little bit easier to understand. But I don't think we're gonna, at least at this very early stage, it doesn't feel like we're gonna see any of those big heavy-handed nerfs that are necessary, like the ones that made Possess Bomb not viable, like the ones that made Knights a lot worse, and like the ones that made Iron Hands Castle not a thing anymore. You know, those big interventions are probably going to be less common now.
I think what I've noticed coming from 4th to all the way to 8th and like missing the middle is like the game is more for everyone now, like even at tournament level. Like, I think because 40k has become more popular, it's grown, it appeals to like a wide array of people. Like, my partner on our second date went to Warhammer World and she'd never heard of Warhammer. And
That's a great second date.
Thank you. She agreed. But like she was like, this is really cool, and like I was like, well, this is how you play, and like the game's got it's much easier to pick up as like someone who's new to games. Like before, my partner she'd never played she played like Monopoly and stuff, but she never played anything remotely like tactical or competitive. And like eighth and ninth have really stepped into that. This is for everyone and more inclusive. And I think they've done it like this. Like honestly, like there's some mistakes. Like things get broken because I think people forget that play design groups are very small and they're battling the whole world. And
For sure.
The whole world's a lot more people. Also, what makes a good designer doesn't necessarily make the best competitive player. Like, it's really hard to get that balance. But where eighth and ninth are going, and I hope they continue to go, is like that. It's for everyone. Like, you can have fun with like a variety of lists. Like, obviously, some lists are there's gonna be the best list. And
Yeah,
the best
there always is. There always is.
Yeah, but what I've seen, like, this is obviously very much through my subjective view, but still the like, the range between like the best and the worst, or like a cutting edge competitive army and a casual like play the models I like the gap seems way less to me than I remember it being, and that may just be sentimental, but
no, I think that's definitely true.
Yeah, it feels that way. It feels like in order to really build a do nothing list in this edition, you have to like be purposefully trying to not play the game. You know, it's if your army contains troops that can secure objectives and big guns that can destroy heavily armored targets, you stand a chance. You know, and like, who's building an army that doesn't include some combination of troops and big guns? That's, you know, that's literally what an army is to most people. You know, it's like a couple of characters, some troops, and some big guns. So I think people are being rewarded for being creative when it comes to, you know, optimizing their armies and thinking in a tournament viability kind of mindset. But I think people are also being rewarded for their creativity and just exploring what's fun and still doesn't get its ass handed to it. You know, it's cool that we're seeing like after the aggressor nerf, for example, a lot of the chat has been, well, you know, I think aggressors are still slightly better than Terminators, for example, and people are saying, yeah, but Terminators are just fucking cooler, so I'm gonna take Terminators. And it's like, that's lovely.
I got a second box of aggressors a week before.
Feels bad, bro.
Yeah, no, but like still, like, yeah, they got nerfed. They're a lot worse. They're half as good as they were previously, basically. But still, like, so many codexes will still love to have a unit like that. So I really shouldn't complain still. And I'm gonna field 6 of them. Like,
I mean, at the end of the day, like, it's still a 3 to 6 model unit that puts down a fucking hail of fire. And Auspex Tactics very recently, a day or two ago, published a video where he looked at essentially how many wounds the unit is likely to cause per 100 points. And he compared the Hurricane Bolter equipped Centurions, aggressors with Boltstorm gauntlets, and a raw config Terminator squad. And he looked at, you know, per 100 points of efficiency. And actually, like, it's still very clear that aggressors are the best unit, but it's close enough that if Terminators are just more fun to you, you can just play Terminators, and the numbers just aren't far enough apart that it's going to matter too much. Because at the end of the day, like, it's a fucking dice game, right? You know, you're never gonna, if you roll 8d6s, you're never gonna roll 4 4+ every single time. That's just like, even though the statistics say every time you roll 8d6, 4 of them will be a 4-up, that's not what's ever going to happen. That's never going to be actually how your game plays out. And so, like, in how it impacts our play experience, we never really feel shitty by taking a unit that's like 5% less efficient than the best unit.
Yeah,
I think something else about the game is like the game looks nicer now. Like the lists look like what you probably think of 40k.
Yeah,
like transports being good is like awesome. They should be good. That's like,
I'm so glad.
To me, like,
Yeah.
the game's about rhinos, wave serpents, and
yeah, and
like,
specifically for Space Marine players, Firstborn transports actually being good again is like such a big deal, because obviously Primaris transports, they're really fucking expensive comparatively. You know, for 120 points, I can get a Razorback that will carry 6 firstborn Marines, and have 2 fucking las cannons on the back of it. Like, that's pretty great for 120 points.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, shall we move on to Emma? Emma, what are you high on right now? What's doing it for you?
Yeah, so I've had a little break from Warhammer, so I haven't seen a huge amount or been involved in a lot. However, I'm quite excited for the Lord of Virulence model, and I just want a release date like right now, please, because I would like to buy it.
I don't think I've seen that miniature. For some reason,
Look at it. It looks incredible. You're missing out.
I feel like a new Nurgle miniature should be a thing that I've seen, and somehow I've had my head so buried in other stuff.
Apparently we don't have enough Nurgle characters, so we're getting more.
Nurgle is like the fucking HQ army these days, isn't it? It's like it was the same thing that it happened with Space Wolves at one point. Space Wolves had all the fucking HQ in the world, and now for some reason it's like Nurgle's thing now. They just have all the sweet HQ, and I love it. I'm here for it.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I'm high on at the moment. I'll be getting that on release day, and probably kit bashing it in some way. But yeah, that's what I'm high on at the moment.
Nice, Fonzie.
Yeah, what am I high on? There's this new book that came out.
That is quite a good new book, and I'm slightly jealous that you're the first one to have got their copy of it. I think mine should arrive today, but it might not arrive till Monday, and I'm a little bit hurt by that.
Yeah, that's the hack of living. First of all, a country that isn't completely locked down, but going to the physical stores.
Yeah.
And like whenever I can, I go to physical stores because I hate waiting for shipments. Like I'm so I want that instant gratification. I gave you my money, now I want stuff. Like
yeah, you see, this is why I use Amazon for so much of my hobby related shit, is because it's just like I click and then the next day it turns up on my doorstep and I'm a happy boy.
Yeah, we don't have decent Amazon here.
But Codex Space Marines is doing it for you, huh?
Yeah, and I'm gonna play my second game of 9th tomorrow, but my first game with the new Codex.
Nice.
And I fear I will have to pick up the pen and paper and write down my army list now.
Has the Raven Guard list undergone a lot of changes as a result of the Codex?
Nah. I used to play like a successor chapter, but I think I'm just going to go straight Raven Guard. The general thing has been slightly nerfed. From being 12 inches, you get light cover, and if you're on terrain, you get dense cover. Now it's 18 inches away, light cover, and 12 inches in terrain, you get dense cover. So it's
I think
a bit worse, but it
comes back to that thing, doesn't it, of like, even when Space Marines get nerfed, they're still Space Marines. Your fucking average troop is still a 3-up ballistic skill, 3-up save, and strength and toughness 4. Like your normal troop is still better than everyone else's, and it now has 2 wounds as well. So it's like
and like I used to run the stealthy Master Artisan, but now like I could pick that and that would be fine. But they've really balanced or nerfed the good successor chapter things, because like now I'm sitting looking for them like I could go for that or that or that. Like, to me, it doesn't seem clear cut anymore. And with that in mind, like, I'll just go the regular Raven Guard then and not pay command points for my relics.
It seems kind of fine. I dig the upgrades to HQ miniatures costing points now, not CP. I'm a fan of that.
Yeah, I love it.
Just Space Marines, it's a CP hungry army. Like if you're playing a Primaris heavy army, like you're gonna want those 2 CP on hand for transhuman and stuff like that. And it's like. Yeah. If like for me with Ultramarines, there's a bunch of strategies all to do with like getting extra shots at your units and stuff like that. It's like you want those CP on hand. So reworking the game in such a way that it doesn't punish you for like wanting to use those stratagems regularly is fucking cool.
Yeah, I think it's a great game design change in general. Like it really like feels like a thing you should be paying points, not command points for.
It does, yeah, it does. It's essentially a better version of the unit, so it does. And also, can we just take a minute to acknowledge how fucking good the fully upgraded Chaplain and Apothecary are now? Like, I seriously don't know if any of my armies should include captains now. I honestly think all of my armies should be led by chaplains now.
Yeah, this thing also accidentally fell down in my
Oh no!
Like,
Oh no!
no.
I don't know how it happened.
I've also got one of those coming. Actually, I have a feeling that
Oh, it looks so cool.
that might end up being the new leader for my Blood Angels army, which is a fucking shame because I'm over there looking at that Smash Captain in Terminator armor that I converted, and I'm like, I really wanted to
I
kill
already
people
have the
with that.
regular old Shap that I'm really happy with.
Maybe
But-
I don't know. Maybe I'll cut a lieutenant for it instead. Maybe I don't know.
Like, this is actually the first bike model that I actively want. Like, I have a really hard time with Space Marine bikes in general, and not
Yeah.
to mention the ATVs that come out now.
They
Those are never gonna
just-
play for me.
They just almost always look shit.
But
Don't
this
they?
one is so dope.
I love them. I think I'm in the minority. So
No, it's kind of weird because it's like I like them because they're big boxy Space Marine bullshit, but then the problem is I like them and then I see the Gene Stealer Colts Atalan Jackals and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah, they're
oh.
nice.
I was,
That's
yeah.
how it can be.
it's like I was convinced that I liked those miniatures, and then I saw actual good bikes, and it's
Yeah.
like maybe I don't like them after all.
I appreciate the big boxy things when it's for stuff that's supposed to be big and boxy, like, you know, tanks. But
Yeah.
when I think motorcycle, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, calling something an all-terrain vehicle and giving it about a 2-inch ground clearance is a little bit suspicious. It's a little bit suspicious. Let's be
Yeah,
real.
it feels like the Asterix has a lot of small fine print in that terrain.
So you may have probably guessed this, but my contribution to the what I'm high on right now section is Ultramarines. But for a slightly
Are you Nick Baton?
No, I am not Nick Baton, but Nick
Yeah.
Baton has taken a bit of an interest in my Ultramarines, and I'll tell you what, right? So I am never gonna be that guy who sits here and says, you know, oh fucking, I don't understand why everybody dogs on Ultramarines all the time. Like, I get why people are sick of the fucking sight of them, but here's a few things, okay? Red is a colour that I have painted a lot of recently, and I'm pretty fucking bored of it, despite the fact that I'm pretty fucking good at it. I have metallic armies on the go at the moment. I have Gene Stealer Colts on the go at the moment that are all drabs and realistic colours. I have a white Tau army on the go at the moment. Like, I have a lot of the different kind of bases covered in shit that I might want to paint on any given day. And blue, traditionally, is a colour that I'm not the best at painting. I used to always really, really struggle to highlight blue in a nice way. So painting this Ultramarines army, like starting work on this Ultramarines army, has actually been such a refreshing step away from everything else that I'm painting. Like, conversely to most people who are sick of seeing everything blue in the world, I haven't actually had a blue miniature in front of me in such a long time now. And at the same time as that really nice refreshing feeling of getting to paint some blue miniatures, I'm learning so much. Like, I actually feel quite competent at highlighting blue now, which I didn't maybe 6 to 8 weeks ago. So it's
in
just
general,
like, no, go on.
like there's too many Ultramarines. I mean, the only place that you have many Ultramarines is GamesWorkshop.com. Like,
Right.
yeah, their stock art is blue, and a lot of Valor is it, but like out in the wild, it's quite rare because there is that stigma to it.
It's one of those things, right? So with Ultramarines, yes, they're on like GW and the Warhammer stuff and whatnot. I don't think I've ever met anyone that isn't like a die-hard Ultramarines fan. So like Nick
No
Baton,
casuals,
for example, is either 0 or 100. There's never like a
So
50
true.
when it comes to Ultramarines.
It's so true.
Which I find
that's how,
Go on.
that's how I call Ultramarine story.
Yeah, go for it, please.
Right. So, my grandfather was before his eyesight went, was a very, very good painter. Like, really, really good. He used to win awards. He was like display level painter. And he was very pleased when I got into Warhammer because he was like, I can teach my grandson my craft.
Of course.
However, I was awful. No clue. Like, actually no clue. Purple and everything. But he wanted to paint his own army, so he got me like an Ultramarine army. But the problem was it was awful because he didn't want to paint like 30 tactical marines. It was like, yeah, I'm going to paint you one whirlwind, one land speeder, one scout squad, one tactical marine squad, one dreadnought. Like, it was great, like a complete mishmash. And he loved it. Like, and so that's like the only person I've ever met who really loved Ultramarines. It was a lovely army, but yeah, it's quite.
Nice.
wasn't the most functional army, but it's you know,
No.
the sentimental attachment though of, you know, of it being painted by someone that you love is quite a nice thing, isn't it? It's kind of one of the things that I look forward to. Like, I look across at my army shelf and I think to myself, you know, there's a lot of miniatures there, and one day in the distant future, I will get out of this and not come back to it. Like, there will probably come a time, right, where I don't know, will there? Like, will I ever stop playing war games? But I guess it's a hypothetical, and I guess, you know, sometimes I sort of think there may come a time in life where I stop playing war games, and I'll have all these armies, and it will be so nice for someone to inherit these armies. And like, I'm looking at like Primaris stuff that's fucking brand new to us, as, you know, people that are around and playing now, and thinking to myself, you know, how sweet it'll be when they're like, oh my god, do you remember the old Primaris stuff from Games Workshop? Like, oh, my granddad gave me like a fucking Blood Angels army that's like mostly Primaris stuff. It's so fucking sweet. You know, now they've got their like Trimaris into fuckers or whatever they're gonna end up being
They're actually
called.
holographic. The bases are holographic, and then you just toggle it and it appears.
Yeah, you can just like
miniatures.
use like a user interface to select what chapter they're painted as and shit like that, and their loadouts and that kind of thing. No need for magnetization anymore.
That sounds terrifying.
Yeah, like one of the things that you rely on as a casual Warhammer player is your opponent being too poor to be able to update the war gear on their army, but being anal enough that they want to play WYSIWYG. So like, you know, their army's never quite got all of the best war gear because they really don't have the money to like buy another version of that unit and equip it with whatever gun hasn't been nerfed into infinity. But like, you know, at the same time, they really want to play WYSIWYG because, you know, that's just what you do. You play WYSIWYG. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Right. I think we're gonna get onto the maybe slightly serious section. Before I do, I did miss somebody in the chat. Jolius has joined us and is hanging out. And again, Jolius is another regular from the Discord. So hey, buddy, thank you for coming to join us. So let's do another little transition now into the rant. And we did it. And here's the great news. We're actually not going to rant today. We actually don't want to rant today because, as a lot of you will probably be aware, today is International or World Mental Health Day. And instead of ranting, we wanted to take some time to share some stories and to just have a bit of a chat about mental health and how it relates to the hobby. Now, I don't want to put any of the pressure on one of you three to start this conversation. So I think what I probably want to do is maybe end on the more positive. So maybe start with the slightly more drab side of it. And so I think, you know, one of the things that I want to start off by talking about is how much the hobby can negatively impact people's mental health. And I think that's an important place to start because it should be talked about, but at the same time, it also means that we can end on talking about all the great positives of the hobby and people's mental health and lift everyone back up after we've summarily depressed the shit out of them. So, like, I guess from my perspective, where I struggle, where it's really hard for me, is the hobby is also my job now. And that's a fairly recent thing in terms of specifically Warhammer. But my hobby being my job is not, you know, that's not new to me. Magic was my job before Warhammer was my job. And the constant between those two things is that it can really, you know, it can take the shine off your hobby sometimes when you have to take it seriously all the time. When it's your job and, you know, things like the quality of the paintwork that you're selling to a customer or the way you present yourself online, the things that you say and think and do, and how you put that across to the world. When those things start to matter more and they're connected to your hobby, it can be very easy for that to take the shine off the hobby. And that can kind of make it difficult to use the hobby as a way of escaping. I don't know how much the rest of you have experience with that, but has anybody else in this conversation maybe ever been in that position before where you want to escape from the hobby or you want to escape with your hobby, but kind of your obligations to the hobby kind of make it feel like another thing that's over your head instead of a thing that you can escape with?
So I've had this experience not with Warhammer but with Magic, and I totally relate to what you're saying. So I write about Magic every week, and it's not a full-time job, but it is a job that I do. It's something I do on the side. I get paid to do it, so it does feel like work sometimes. Those lines of enjoyment and work can blur quite quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And there are times where I've just not felt like playing Magic because I associate it with the job I do. So it's been very hard to disengage and actually enjoy Magic for the reasons that I started playing. And yeah, it's really, really tough, but it's just a good way just to find, or at least remember why you started the hobby and what you enjoy about it.
For sure.
And just kind of embrace that. You don't need to do everything. Like in the scale of Warhammer, you can either play on tabletop competitively. You can just paint. That's what I do. I don't intend to play. I just want to paint some really cool models because I think they're great. And you can just read the books. You don't even have to pick up a brush or do anything. You can just enjoy the lore for what it is because the lore is very, very good. I just think it's important just to remember why you got into the hobby and the people that you enjoy talking to about it as well. It's just good to remember the positives and the initial interactions you had.
Of course. Yeah, I think another thing that is worth mentioning as well is the ability to compartmentalize, to be able to separate the specific processes that relate to your job within the hobby and the things that you are doing just for your own enjoyment. Being able to keep them mentally separate can help them feel, from a motivational perspective, maybe a little bit more separate as well. Sorry, Fonzie, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, no, in like a similar vein, when I worked at an online magic, like a magic shop, but we did most of a business online. I think the times when I worked full time there basically was the time I played the least Magic as well, because it's become so entangled in general.
I know, David, you've had Magic be part of your profession before as well. Did you find that it was a pressure sometimes to want to play when you were around it all day at work as well?
I think it's different for me. I'll probably tell a bit of a story now, if that's okay.
We love stories. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So for me, like, identity is very important to me. And so I came from quite a disadvantaged background. I went to university. As you've probably gathered, I'm not good at the confidence thing. But I went to not a great university. I was in a really bad abusive relationship, and I wasn't in a very good place. And I discovered Magic. And while I was good academically, I didn't enjoy the university experience. It wasn't what I expected. I didn't know you could quit and switch university. But I got into Magic when I lived in the southwest of England, and I loved it. And I was quite good, like randomly, because I was. But Magic became everything to me. Like, it was part of my identity, and it was like, this is the only thing I do. Like, when I moved to Nottingham about 7 years ago, I think it's this weekend actually, like, I met the competitive players, and that was it was all my life was competitive Magic. And I think that I didn't act in a way that was nice because winning was very important to me. And now my relationship with Magic it's very different. Even before COVID, when I met my partner about 3 years ago, like, I wasn't PTQing every weekend, I wasn't competing for everything. And she was like, have you ever like won much in Magic? I went, well, I used to play a lot, but now I'm like a lot more casual. Like that, I think like competitive Magic was my whole identity. And I think that's very dangerous because like the best players in Magic have like a 60% win rate, which is not very high. Like that's very low. And the game has huge amounts of variance. And when you tie yourself and your self-worth and identity to this variable thing, it's dangerous and alarming. Like, my story probably isn't too discommon for competitively minded players of games. Like, you just end up on the wrong track. Now my relationship with Magic is much healthier. I still care competitively. The game isn't in the greatest place competitively. It's why I've moved more to Warhammer, like any of us here. Like now, like my involvement with Magic is I play Cube every night with my partner. I play Arena. I try and make top 1200 on the ladder. If I do, that's really cool. If not, I'm not going to be.
I think we lost you for a second there.
Yeah, Discord's being a bit sketch.
Yeah, it's okay. You're back now. You're back now.
So I sound like how like my involvement's like I play queue with my partner. I like try and make top 1200 on arena. If I do, that's super cool. I think like like need to like separate your identity, and I think one of the nicer things about Warhammer and modeling and painting in general is like the identity structure is very different. Like you can mix the lines a lot easier. Like it's very hard to say to your competitive friends in Magic, oh, I like Commander, or I like Cube, or oh, I want to go to this winner box. I don't want to go to the PTQ. No, I don't want to travel with 5 people in a 4-person car to Scotland and go play this.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Yeah. We one of the things we liked to do in Bath was you've probably done this yourself, David, actually, because I know that you were in the southwest as well. Is we liked to go to Wales to do our PTQs because typically they were smaller and the average quality of players was lower. And you look back on that, and that's like the sharkiest, shittiest thing ever. So like rock up as a bunch of out of town people and just fuck up someone's PTQ.
And then you're in the PT finals with someone who's giving you a lift home.
Yeah, and it's like it's actually like kind of toxic and kind of shitty to just like roll up on this little store in this little town that and know that you're going to be in the top 15 or 20% of players there purely based on the fact that like you have more access to better players to practice against, and because
I
this is
I think that was a flaw with the PTQ system. I just think it made it quite like. You could go to different places week in, win out to try and qualify for the Pro Tour, what it was called back then.
Yeah, and the point is,
it just put you in this horrible mental state because it felt like work, and you didn't get paid for it.
The Pro Tour was supposed to be a showcase of the best players. Drawling in the chat remembers Cardiff road trips, and. It failed in that purpose. It wasn't a showcase of the best players because you could predate your way into the Pro Tour. You could take advantage of the system in order to get yourself on the Pro Tour, and that's kind of one of the problems with Magic that relates very closely to mental health, and is one of the reasons I distanced myself so much from Magic so suddenly, is because systemically that game is built in ways to encourage a lot of predatory behavior. The company's business practice is notoriously more predatory than ever right now, and like the whole community is up in arms about it. Everyone's really upset about it. But I think actually if you look inwards as a Magic player and you ask yourself, the number of times where like in any other game of Magic, you would tell your opponent if they're tipping their cards towards you, but in a tournament you didn't tell your opponent and you got a little sneaky look at their hand. Or, in any other situation you would act this way, but in a tournament you didn't. It's like we've all done it. Every single one of us has done it at some point, whether we consider ourselves a good person or not. We have done something in a tournament setting in Magic where we've taken advantage of another player in some way or another.
I think the peak example, I think, was a Twitter story, so it may or may not be true. But
pinch of salt.
Scummiest thing you've done in a tournament, and it wasn't one. I mean, it was a pretty scummy thing, but it's also really funny. Play Vendilion click. It resolves. Opponent shows their hand. They take their time, write the hand down. Okay, target me.
Yeah. Yeah,
this is a real story, actually.
No, yeah, it is.
It's a story. Yeah.
In fact, it's not even a story. It's actually a thing. I've seen it happen multiple times. Because
knowing how the card works.
Yeah, because the normal shortcut with click is that people will cast it and say click you or click me, and that's not actually how the card works. You cast it, the spell resolves, then the ability goes on the stack and targets. And it's a common way that players will take advantage of that rule to trick newer players. And it was something that was actually regularly happening for a long time. And it was when stories about it started circulating on social media that a lot of players became aware of, oh shit, no, I've done that before. I've shown someone my hand when I didn't have to, But this is the point: is these things, these predatory habits that we are encouraged to display through a game like that, they can be very bad for your mental health. You can find yourself questioning your own morality as a result of it. And I know, I've certainly had a crisis of personality in the past related to Magic the Gathering and how I realized that I was only ever having fun when I didn't care about it. Every time I cared, I stopped having fun. And this can be a thing that definitely happens with Warhammer as well. You know, the more you invest, the deeper you go down the rabbit hole of wanting to win, wanting to always be dominant, and not making it about the enjoyment of the game. The more you can expose yourself to this danger of either behaving in a way that's maybe not great, or maybe thinking in a way that's not very healthy. You know, and just pushing yourself into this corner of kind of quite bad mental health as a result of something that is, you know, it's a game and it's supposed to be something we enjoy and do for fun.
Oh, this is it. It's a hobby, isn't it? Hobbies are meant to be enjoyed. So why are you doing this thing or going down this road that does not make you happy? If it doesn't make you happy, you should. This might be quite harsh. You should probably not do it, or reevaluate what you want from the hobby.
I think, you know, one of the things we have to maybe question ourselves a little more firmly on is, like, David said something actually outside of this conversation. It was in a group chat about, you know, competitive players being good for games, and competitive players are absolutely good for games because they further the technology within the game. You know, they further the understanding of the game, which is something that's definitely it's very useful for the development of the game itself. You know, if people aren't breaking the game, how can you make it less breakable? How can you make it a fairer, better designed, more airtight game if there aren't people out there that are breaking it? So
people playing salamanders and aggressors and stuff.
Right, exactly. So, you know, it's important to have competitive players. The question you have to, I think, ask yourself for the sake of protecting your mental health is, why do I play this game? Because if you only play the game to win, the game isn't your hobby. Winning is your hobby. And setting yourself up with a mental attitude that can make that healthy is a very separate thing. If the game is your hobby, winning really needs to not be an objective. And I don't say that in the sense of you should play to lose. That's silly. You know, winning always feels better than losing, universally. So don't play to lose, because it's always going to feel better to win. But
you can, on a side note, learning to lose is actually quite a really cool trait to learn in Magic and any sort of competitive game, because it will just make you a better person, and you're not going to throw salt around if something doesn't come your way or whatever. Especially in Magic. Magic's quite a variance-heavy game. Things might not just land the way you expect. And you could be like, oh, cool, I could not do anything about this. Good game, you know, that sort of thing. But yeah, learning to lose is just a really honourable trait to learn, which is often underlooked.
And again, like, it's good for your mental health. You know, it's good for you to be able to not feel sad and upset if you lose at a game.
Especially in Magic, where you're gonna lose half of your games, or 40% if you're really good. Like,
as we said earlier, like, the top players win 2/3 of their games.
LSV's win rate is what, 67%, something like that, and that's like really high in Magic.
Yeah. So they lose a third of their games, and a third of that time they're not salty and just like, you know, whatever.
It happens.
I didn't draw enough lands. Blah, 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 made these excuses. They just owned it, and if you could just own the fact that you're not going to win all your games, you'll probably enjoy it more.
Yeah, and also I think Warhammer, like, as a game, lends itself so much better. But like, I like min-maxing in general quite a lot, like, especially when playing Magic in a 1v1 sense.
But isn't that, I mean, we've spoken about this. We've spoken about this directly. It's to do with the process of min-maxing, isn't it? It's to do with the mental arithmetic of it. And
like, I like you briefly mentioned, I use a speed run where it's like, I will sit for hours to compare something that saves a second. Like, and stuff like that, and that sort of process interesting to me. But in Warhammer, I feel for some reason way more okay with not min-maxing. Like, it's easier to take. I like this unit, I'll take it. When I take a unit, I'll take the loadout, but I think it suits my army the best, of course. But like, it's way easier to this is a cool model and I take it.
Well, it's like you kind of get to do this cool thing with Warhammer, because you can, like, pick a miniature that you really like, but then load it out in a way that is best suited to your army. So you sort of get to kind of have this nice middle ground between like just playing for rule of cool and optimizing at the same time. And that I actually find is the far more interesting way to build armies for me. Like for me, that's what buzzes me is starting out with just these are the minis I like in that range, and then how do I make them as good as they can be contextually within the current edition, codex, etc.
Yeah, like when I'm planning out my Death Guard army now, I think I'm leaning to having a ton of like Terminators in general, like probably...
which are like super fucking spendy on the points.
Yeah, like it's definitely not the best way to build armies, but at least all of my Terminators gonna have a flail of contagion and stuff like that. Like there's no
plague flails are so fucking dirty.
So
yeah, but like I
So
love the
dirty.
Death Guard Terminators. Even you, Flyboy. I'm gonna.
I think the strangest part about coming to Warhammer from a really competitive Magic background was like when Space Marines were the best army. Like my girlfriend was like, "Oh, well, do you want to play Space Marines?" I'm like, "No, I don't really like Space Marines." And she's like, "But they just win everything." I went, "Yeah, but they're not really for me." And like when I was playing Chaos, it was like, I don't want to take the Slanesh unit with the Khorne unit because that doesn't match.
Yeah.
It was really strange.
Yeah.
Like such a new experience.
Yeah, it's like, you know, going back to that thing of, you know, minimal min-maxing, you know. Like, I wanted my Space Marine squads in my Word Bearers army. I mean, Word Bearers, first of all, just straight up not the best Chaos Legion to be playing right now. Haven't been for a very long time. During Possess Bomb, you know, maybe Word Bearers were a thing you want to be doing. But right now, no, not a thing you want to be doing. But I wanted all of my Chaos Space Marine squads to just be like 10-man squads with a sergeant, and then just 9 bolters. No special weapons, no heavy weapons. And it's like, that's actually not very good, but it's what I want to see on the field. I want to basically just see a fucking legion of bolt guns pointing towards my opponent, you know? So how do I make that good? Okay, well, if I give these units Mark of Slanesh, then now they've got Endless Cacophony as a thing that they can do. And suddenly, like, that's one squad of 10 putting out, like, 40 shots of rapid fire, and that's actually pretty good no matter what way you slice it, you know. A relatively cheap unit being able to do that is great. And so, you know, you can kind of find that happy little place where you can be fucking around and brewing and having a good time. But
and added to the fact, I think it was in your essay or wherever it was, like, it's so much more time dedication to a single unit. I have this unit, it's painted up. I spent hours on it, rather than in a game like Magic where it's so easy to, you have a choice between 2 cards. I will purchase the better card and sleeve it and play it.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it's not like Magic where you can just buy a whole deck in like 5 minutes, whereas building an army takes like months, and it takes not only financial effort, but, you know, time. Like you've got to actually put time into it to get what you want. So it's really important to identify what you really want from the hobby and like what army you want to paint, because if you find out halfway you're like, actually, I don't want to paint these Ultramarines, I want to do, you know, Harlequins or something, then, you know, it's going to be a difficult situation.
Yeah, and I think that actually, while we're sort of having this discussion about kind of having it both ways, that's a very convenient point to be able to slip into kind of some of the more positive stories about, you know, mental health and the hobby. And actually, one of the things that I wanted to say and why I think it's a good time to segue is that because of that kind of very unique trait that Warhammer has, I actually kind of feel like Warhammer saved me in a way. Magic was putting me in a position where the only way I could have fun with it is in a completely sort of isolationist approach. And essentially what it ended up becoming was I only played Magic with my actual real life friends, and it was basically just something to do while we were hanging out. Playing Magic that way is completely separate from everything else about playing Magic. You know, the things that you're doing at that table with those people do not relate to the wider metagame. They do not relate to the way people in general play the game. And due to that kind of microcosmic nature of only playing Magic that way, I was still kind of holding on to it somehow. And I played the game for such a long time that it was very hard to kind of let go. You know, I naturally sort of wanted to hold on to it somehow. But everywhere around me, every single thing I was seeing about Magic was just like, this does not represent me. This is not who I am as a person. You know, the predatory competitive behavior from players, the predatory financial behavior from the company, the number of people associated with Magic that were getting ousted for a while for being really quite horrible people. When all of these things are kind of happening at the same time, and you look at all of that and it's just like, I don't want to put my name to this anymore, and this is my business. So I'm suddenly left in this position where it's like, what the fuck am I going to do? You know, this thing that I'm doing for a living, I'm embarrassed of it. Like, I don't want to tell people that I work with Magic the Gathering for a living. I don't want people to know that I work with Magic the Gathering for a living, because right now Magic the Gathering is a fucking embarrassment to me, and that was really how I felt. And I was getting so depressed because I felt trapped in it. I felt like I had to stay associated with Magic because it was my job. I felt like for as long as the way I make my money is painting on people's Magic cards, I've got to know what cards are current and good, and I've got to, you know, be able to have conversations about the game with players, and in order to kind of build rapport with customers and that kind of thing. And then I kind of... I'd sort of started painting again by that point anyway. And I kind of realized, like, if I'm just willing to take a risk, just as, you know, for a short period of time, just take a pay cut for a little while, essentially, and just try and scrape by, I can probably do most of the things that I did professionally in relation to Magic, in relation to Warhammer. But the difference is Warhammer's actually all about doing it your way. Warhammer is not about kind of the established correct method. You know, there is no net decking in Warhammer. If you look at a tournament winning list, the next tournament, like 2 days later, will be won by a completely different list. So what's the point in net decking your list? You know, and it was this realization that I could, like, still have the job that I'm so passionate about, and the day-to-day work in life that brings me so much fulfillment and so much enjoyment, but I didn't have to feel ashamed because it was connected to something that I was just entirely hopeful and positive and passionate and uplifted about. And so, you know, through my lens, Warhammer kind of gave me something when I felt like I'd kind of lost everything. You know, it was quite big for me. But do any of you have stories about how Warhammer sort of positively impacted you, how Warhammer did something for you that brought you to a good place?
Yeah, I would say so. Like, in the last few years, on and off, I've had my fair few bouts with depression, and have had times like where you sit and you don't do a whole lot. You have this void of time, sort of. You sit, scroll Twitter, stream, and even like playing a regular game can be quite taxing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it wasn't a bad bout now, but I realized, like, when I picked it up, how badly I needed something like that's just a dedicated hobby, to do something to do with my hands, because like otherwise, like, I'm a music and sometimes guitar teacher by trade, and like I will practice the guitar quite a bit, but that's still like now entangled to my trade, like you spoke about.
Yeah, it's that separation
earlier.
of work and hobby.
Yeah, and now it's something like, and that's something I spent ages on and a lot of time. Like, when I practiced most, it was like 4 to 6 hours a day in addition to other things. But and like, I love it. It's my passion. It's what I do. But when I picked it up, I realized so much. Yeah, I need something that's completely separate, but just a pure hobby. And I'm not sure. Like, it probably could have been a lot of things, but Warhammer was, well, something that suited me at the time, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you had friends
really
that were getting into it
yeah.
and stuff like that.
Like, having something that this is something that I do only for fun.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You have those sort of things. Like, sorry. I'm sorry. Like, if it's watching TV shows or playing video games, those things are so inherent in my, like, day-to-day life. You just do it. Like,
yeah, it's almost automatic, isn't it?
Yeah, like, now I'm hobbying. That's like the separate thing, and it's
that conscious, focused you time, that thing that is for you, and it is for relaxing and
also,
enjoyment.
Yeah,
being
I
able.
feel similar as well. That's what Warhammer is to me as well. It's just this little safe haven where I can just go, oh, I'm just gonna, paint some Death Guard, and I'm just gonna completely be disconnected from the world, not on social media. Just gonna put some music on or a podcast and just paint. And
Absolutely.
it's really therapeutic. I think that's what I find.
Yeah, and also like in regards to that, being able to try and tell myself I'm doing hobby time, it's okay.
Yeah.
So that's also something I struggle with, like justifying having your free time. Has been quite hard
So
in general.
it's very interesting that you raise that as a point, actually, because I think one of the very unique advantages I get by doing hobby for a living is I get to justify hobby as work. And it's with altering, it was something that I never really did. Sorry, I'm just trying to clear something out of my way very sneakily whilst live on YouTube.
Yeah, mentioning it makes it so much more sneakily.
I didn't realize.
Sneaky. But like one of the things that I can do, for example, is when I do videos every week, I produce 2 videos every week, and not every video requires me to paint a miniature, right? But sometimes if I just really want to paint a miniature that day, I just don't, I don't feel up to the pressure of painting for a commission, or I don't feel inspired that day, which are like just normal things as an artist. You just have days where you don't feel inspired, or you just have days where you can't hack the pressure. I can just kind of take one of my own miniatures down off the shelf, and as long as that camera's pointing down at me while I'm painting it, then it's work, because I can build a video around it. And that's so good for my mental health, and wasn't something I could do with Magic, because like I'm not playing the game, so how am I, like, what do I want alters for myself, you know what I mean? And even so, like, when I wanted altered Magic cards, I wanted altered Magic cards from badass artists that I really liked. Like, I don't want alters from me. I want alters from, people like Modfly. Like, he's one of my favorite artists. So
yeah, but it's also like since painting your miniatures in Warhammer, that's the norm. That's what you do. It's a huge part of a hobby. Like,
exactly. Yeah,
and
it's central
hard
to the hobby.
escape from. But altering in Magic is like a really niche community.
Absolutely. And so this was the interesting thing, was that I realized quite quickly into starting to paint Warhammer miniatures for a living, that actually, because YouTube was part of my job, because it was kind of amalgamated into my daily work, in the same way that when I was altering, streaming was part of my job, it allowed me to be able to still do stuff for me, just because I want to do it, just because it's what I feel like doing that day. And that was still work, and that's like such a privilege. So few people in the world get to do that, get to just show up to work that day and say, I'm doing this for me because I want to, because I'm going to enjoy it, and I can just passively integrate that into my work for the day just by having a camera pointing down at me. It's a really nice thing. David, do you have anything that you want to add? I saw you sort of trying to speak a couple of times, but was there anything you wanted to put in?
Yeah, I guess like Warhammer allows me something quite special as well. Like, so I'm autistic. So when I was younger, I view life a bit like Sims. So we put our points in various parts. So for me, I put all my points in like maths and very like practically minded subjects. And then as I've got older, and Magic allowed this as well, I realized actually I'm way more creative than I thought I was as a teenager / young 20s. So for me, I was like, oh, I've screwed my life up because I've put all my points in how to write an essay, how to do a spreadsheet, how to do this. So what Warhammer, and to a lesser extent Magic, like for Magic, my big hobby is building cubes. Like, I love building stuff to themes. Like, I have a spreadsheet at home of like 20 different cubes. Some of them will never see the light of day. Some of them I have. Some of them are great and awesome. And I look forward to when we can all meet up and play in the real world soon, TM. But like, I think that the really special part of Warhammer is like, it allows me to like express myself creatively and encourages that.
Mm-hmm.
Even like, if I want to take the best army, I can paint it in the color scheme I like, or I can like explore like list building in a way that I like. Like, I think that's the real bigger draw to me. Like, a lot of my competitive Magic friends have played Warhammer in their childhood because that's the natural progression.
Yeah, D&D, Warhammer, Magic the Gathering, they're like the three pillars.
See, I've never played a role-playing game.
Coming back to Warhammer.
I've never played like Dungeons and Dragons in my life, which is quite unusual, but I'm sure I'll rectify that at some point. But like, I got a message a couple of weeks ago from like my Magic friends going, "Oh yeah, we just picked up a kill team," and I'm like, "Yeah, just a kill team."
Here we go.
Yeah. Like,
Always starts with the kill team.
2 weeks later, they're like, "Oh, like, do you know anything about the competitive side of the game?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like, here's a big list of podcasts I listen to while I'm working." And then like they're like, "Oh, they've shown what they painted," and like it's awesome. Like it's really nice to see. Like for me, it's like I really realize now from Warhammer that I value like creativity an awful lot, which is like really nice.
I think something I think you would probably agree with this based on what you're saying. Something that's really wonderful about Warhammer is that your validity as a player doesn't come from just straight up your ability. Your creativity is actually contributory to how your validity is viewed by others, in the sense of, if you're a great painter but you don't play the game at all, people will still really dig what you're doing. If you're a genius, if you're a genius commander, if you're a brilliant strategist, but you're a terrible painter, people will still really dig your contribution to the game. If you just like to talk about the game and you don't really play that much or paint that much, or you just like to do stuff like this, people will still really dig your content. It's like you get to feel wanted and valid and actually a part of something, actually a member of a community, regardless of how you contribute. Whereas conversely, coming from a Magic background, like your tournament results are the only thing that dictate where you stand in the pecking order.
Yeah, I think that was a big part of it, especially like before the game changed. Like definitely, it was a huge part of it.
Yeah, and
I think what I'm like. Sorry, go on.
No, please.
I think, like, from what I understand, like, I'm good friends with a lot of people who are quite good at Lord of the Rings, like the miniature game. And they were like, yeah, it's very different to what you probably expect at the top level. Like, people let people have, like, game-losing take-backs. And I was like, that blew my mind. Like,
yeah.
That's, like, the norm. And it's like, that's really cool. That's, like, a community. And, like, it's not so that I dislike Magic or I want to leave the Magic community. I mean, it's all very different now. Really, it's just me and a laptop at the minute. But, yeah, I think that the Warhammer community, from what I've seen, it looks really positive. And I think that the fact the game has evolved, like when I started when I was like 16 to 18, like the competitive players weren't the nicest players. They were very hyper-focused. But now and the tournaments had to appeal to that kind of gamer. But now because the tournaments are for, like, I work for the government and we have like a big group chat about Warhammer, and it's like some guy was going to fly from Ireland and his list was like terrible, like it couldn't win anything. But he was like, oh, and he admitted it, like, this isn't me casting judgment. He was like, oh, I just have like a bunch of Howling Banshees. They're awful.
Yeah, they're unplayable, but fuck it, I want them.
And it's like, that's really cool. And he was like excited to come to the tournament. Whereas like with, like, I'm sure we can all relate, we've played at the tournament against the kid who's got their intro deck, and it's like, this is actually awful for everyone.
Yeah.
It's like,
you just feel bad. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, like, this is like, and I don't think you like you get as many bad games as Warhammer. Like, as long as you're like, I mean, my first two games have been unsatisfying, but that's because like we're all learning the new edition. We're all very new.
Yeah.
And like, I just had great matchups and I got the perfect deployment.
But that's also the thing, isn't it? Is like, those clunky games where you're trying to figure out rules, they're not as much fun as those slick games where everyone knows what they're doing. It's one of the reasons I'm reluctant to go across to Tabletop Simulator at the moment, is because I know that my games are going to be absolute clunkosauruses while I figure out TTS.
It will be fine. It's not that bad.
Fonzie, considering that you are, of all of my friends, the one who makes the most boomer-related remarks in my direction, considering that, like,
that should be a good sign, right?
The whole interplay of banter between me and you is you calling me old and shit with technology. Are you really saying that you think I, of all people, will be fine with TTS?
Yeah, I do. And I mean, in the time aspect, to be honest, rolling dice takes way quicker in TTS.
I
So
appreciate
it evens it out.
I appreciate the confidence. I definitely appreciate the confidence. Has everyone put in what they want to put in, or does anyone else have anything else that they want to add to the discussion on mental health related to Warhammer and the positives and the pitfalls?
Yeah, I have something. Just a quick note.
Sure.
One thing I've noticed from Magic to Warhammer in terms of hobby is that I find Warhammer to be a lot more gratifying because you can kind of I'm talking about painting here, like building and painting. Like you can just paint like an arm on a model and that's it. Like that can be your day. You don't have to do all this stuff. But the fact that you slowly build to this thing and you have this completed model, it just feels really like validating. Like it's like, oh cool, I did this thing with this paintbrush and this stuff, and you see the end results, and it's quite encouraging because you're like, oh yeah, I can do this thing, so I want to do more of it.
Yeah, it's kind of this funny thing, isn't it? Like when a painting project is your goal, and as a Warhammer player, painting projects will be your goal at various stages throughout your lifetime as a player, and you'll complete them and move on to the next one. But once you've finished that painting project, once you've completed that goal of getting that piece finished, your prize is you've got a badass finished miniature to look at. And unlike with a Magic tournament where oh fuck yeah, I top 8'd, that's pretty sweet. Like it's gone the next day. You wake up in your own bed and you go to work and life is normal again. Like nothing matters. But when you finish that rad painting project and you're like super high on, the Sergeant Telion that you painted using no metallics and washes or whatever it might be.
That got retweeted by a Warhammer community and showcased in the stream.
And is definitely one of next week's videos.
Yeah.
Like you get to have that every day. That's yours for the rest of your life. You get to like pick up that model and look at it and analyze the things that you did well and the things that you did bad. And you get to have the reward of getting to the end of that project and the things that you learned every single day. And that's something quite unique to miniatures games. That's something quite unique to, I guess, to a lesser extent, board games now as well, because board games are starting to more and more incorporate high quality miniatures as play pieces. But it's a type of reward that really is quite unique to us as miniature hobbyists that only really we get to enjoy.
Yeah, like as I posted in the Discord, and if anybody's listening and not in the Discord, go to this person's Patreon and join the Discord because it's amazing.
$1 a month, people. $1 a month. It's not a lot of money, and the Discord alone is fucking great.
As you can see, the minis up here. Like I posted in the Discord as well. Like while painting them, I have like most of them assembled and primed. Like painting one by one and seeing them like going from black prime to
the
painted,
loading screen,
like progress bar. Yeah, it was was so satisfying seeing like them slowly taking shape.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? Is like an army as a painting project is 30, 40, 50 miniatures, whatever. If you're playing Orcs or Imperial Guard, maybe a couple of hundred, whatever. And you have that kind of progress bar feel to it as you see more and more of that army get painted. But also, when you break that down, each individual miniature is also an achievement. And is also a thing that you get to be proud of, and that's kind of it's so nice. It's like that's my big comfort blanket when it comes to mini painting, because I don't get to paint for myself as often as I'd like to. It's so nice to be able to look at those individual finished miniatures and say, one day, all those blue people will have gold and metallics and basing, and one day it'll happen. Definitely.
One thing I like. Sorry.
Go on.
One thing I really have enjoyed seeing from this community, and it is harder in Magic. Like the best player can't help everyone worse than them because that's just how the structure works. The interaction, people are really nice feeding back in the community, and it's great. I'm very excited to be a part of the Warhammer community. As I go along, obviously this isn't even though this is a pretty miserable time for everyone. COVID sucks. I'm excited for when it's over and we get to play some games or we get to meet up and and get to see what it's like more in the tabletop. It's already been very impressive online and from what I've heard through word of mouth. So getting to see it it's exciting times, I think.
Yeah, one of the things that I've always loved and has always made me feel so good is like rocking up to either a friend's house or to Warhammer World or whatever, and just seeing other people's armies, just looking at other people's miniatures, other people's armies, you know, being able to like I used to always think when I was little and I first got into the hobby, because you have to remember, like, I started this hobby when I was 6 years old. Like, I was a fucking baby. But I was always very cautious to touch other people's miniatures because my elder brothers were the people that got me into the hobby, and they would beat the shit out of me if I touched their miniatures. So it's like, you know, it was always kind of, you don't touch other people's miniatures. But something I realized very quickly is that people actually want you to get hands on with their miniatures. They want you, you know, pick them up by the fucking base. Don't go picking them up by like the tip of a spear or an arm or something that might break off. But everyone loves showing each other their miniatures, and they want you to get hands-on and look at their paintwork and like learn from their paintwork, and like you don't get that in other hobbies. You don't get to just be able to like go up and help yourself to someone else's knowledge and ability and be able to just absorb it by seeing their output. You know, it's again, it's another one of those things that's kind of unique to the hobby and kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
Do we want to move on now? Do we want to start talking about the next? Oh, I just noticed in the chat, Steel Dragon Phrase is finally here. He says, "Welcome to the show, buddy. Welcome to the show." It's really nice. We're getting a lot of regulars from Discord showing up to come and chat with us. I think what we're probably going to find is that the majority of my viewer base watches this back as opposed to watches it live. But
Yeah.
it's lovely that that those of you from the Discord that have come to join us want to be here live. We are gonna, after this section, we would normally do the mailbag when it's a one-on-one version of the podcast. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to have some time there for anyone in the chat to ask us literally anything they want. It's going to be a four-way AMA where you can ask us literally anything you like. So those of you that are in the chat at the moment, stick around, because you're going to get a section all of your own where you get to ask us whatever the hell you want, and we will probably answer roughly almost truthfully-ish. So we're gonna move on now to the final of the main sections. Before we do that, and that is the section where I ask my guests, "What's coming up?"
What's coming up then, man? What's coming up?
And we are back. So we can go back to going in order now. What hobby, David, have you got coming up? What exciting things have you got in the pipeline?
We'll skip the boring part where I tell you I've got more jet bikes to paint, because it's only so exciting to hear about your full model army.
I really want to paint some jet bikes, because I keep seeing all these really nicely airbrushed ones, and I'm just like, I want to do that.
They're really nice.
Really cool model.
One of the things, like, I'm gonna have like my plan, which never happens. I'm gonna have like my competitive Harlequin army that's like for people who want to play like the game at the highest level.
For the sweaty people.
Like me, those people who want to win. Power of bastards. No, like I'll have that, and then like, because I quite like the entire Space Elf range, I've got a really cool, overly ambitious plan where I take a bunch of I don't know, just Sigma very well. They're Deepkin.
I don't know.
They're called.
Yeah, I don't know if
Those
Deepkin.
models. So I love those models.
They're
but
fucking
the
cool.
problem is, I can't
Are
really.
those the ones that had the knight but doesn't have a body thing?
Yeah, I really want one of those.
Yeah, but they also have the fucking flying turtle. Like, before we talk about anything else in the model range, let's talk about the fact that they literally have greater Tuin.
It's such a cool range. The problem I have with it is like I couldn't really imagine it being on the tabletop. Like I couldn't see like how my army from the water is like battling someone's. They're not called Toonkins. I really don't know if they're Age of Sigmar, but like the skeleton people. I can't like suspend my disbelief.
It's okay, David.
Like,
The title of the vodcast is My Big Fat Mouth, a Warhammer 40,000 podcast. So it's fine. You don't have to know anything about Eos.
Yeah.
Like my plan for all the Deepkin stuff is to. I really like Dark Eldar, but they are pretty bad at the minute, from what the internet tells me. But I will convert some jet bikes using the Shark models.
Yeah,
Like-
the thing with Dark Eldar is that they just got brutally nerfed. They
they
were
did.
a really good army, but the points costs for the bodies that you're buying now are just not very.
On the other hand, we're in Codex rotation season, so give it a few months and you may see new.
Exactly. Like it's probably pretty likely that Harlequins typically, like I think they are one of the armies that are so small that they often get their updates in White Dwarf.
Yeah.
So, like, the thing with Harlequins being tier 1 at the moment is they probably won't stay tier 1 for very long because it's so easy for Games Workshop to adjust them, to pull them back down. Because they will probably just print the rules in White Dwarf anyway. It's probably not going to be its own publication. And if it is its own publication, then that's great news for Harlequin players because it probably means that the army is going to be really good for a really long time. But the chances are it is, it's probably going to be a fairly short-lived thing. So, like, having another project coming up is a very, very smart thing to do.
And the other thing is, so I don't know if I mentioned this, I can't build a model to save my life with the instructions.
I hate building miniatures.
Yeah, me too. My beloved loves building miniatures but hates painting. So
that's okay. At least you can double team it.
We had like the talk where she was playing Tyranids, and she got into them right after the 8 Hive Tyrant list got banned. And I'm like, right, we have to have the talk about what you want from the hobby because that influences what I want. If you want to play like fluffy thematic lists where we just take units we like, that's really cool, I'll do that. And she was like, no, I want to beat you and like I want to have like a competitive chance. I'm like, okay, well, here are like the options, and she settled on Blood Angels. So when they get their book, I'll be told to take some time off work, and a big pile of boxes will be
build and paint all of this, please.
Yeah, I'll be doing the painting, so that's my future for the game.
Yeah, Blood Angels are in an interesting place at the moment because obviously, like, the Space Marines Codex obviously slightly nerfs them, but a lot of it is just kind of a few little rejigs. But then when the Blood Angels supplement comes out and they have new updated stats for all of their special units, like Blood Angels is a army of special units. Blood Angels is all about like the Librarian Dread and the Death Company and the Sanguinary Guard, and it's like, all of these things that are unique to Blood Angels. So when that supplement lands, chances are, like, even just the fact that it's going to be whatever Space Marines are right now plus something, just that fact on its own means it's probably going to be a really good army. We're kind of lucky as Blood Angels players. We sort of always get it a little bit good like that. We were good in 8th edition. We're probably going to be good in 9th edition. Back in 5th edition, when I took my last break, we were pretty decent. We were okay, although Chaos Space Marines were also kind of quite dominant for a lot of that. But it's kind of nice being a Blood Angels player. You get to be fairly sure that you're going to be at least an okay army.
I must admit, all the new Marine models, like my earlier position about not liking Marines, is becoming more and more tested because you can just do so much.
Yeah,
you might see a out of me yet.
That was the reason for me picking Marines as the army when I returned. Because I quit 5-6 years ago, and coming back, there's a ton of new armies, and what Marines aren't short, stubby, tent-legged things anymore.
Not like this.
Yeah.
Every Marine with his hand like that in front of his bolter.
Yeah.
When I came back to the hobby and saw that Admech was an army, my mind was blown. From not looking at Warhammer for 5-6 years, and I was like, oh my god, Admech have an army.
Yeah, Admech, Gene Stealer Colts didn't exist last time I looked at the hobby. Custodes didn't exist last time I was in the hobby. Coming back in 8th edition, there were quite a few armies that were brand new to me, and it was very cool. So I guess next we need to know what Emma's got coming up. What's going to be happening?
I mentioned that earlier. I'm just going to be kit bashing some Death Guard Plague Marines, and I'm going to be trying out some different bases. So I've got some Martian Iron Cross and Martian Iron Earth, and I'm just going to have a little play around because I really like the reddy rusty colour because I think it goes quite well with the whole Death Guard colour palette. So I'm going to be messing around with some bases and just kit bashing some Marines, and they're going to look really cool. I also have a Typhus box that is still sealed over there that I might crack open at some point as well.
2 seconds. There's a comment in the chat from Bone Shredder Gaming. It's a very, very good question. Bone Shredder, we're gonna have an AMA section coming up just after this one, so if you stick with us for just a few minutes longer, we will answer that question because I actually think it's a really, really interesting one. So just bear with us for a brief moment. But yeah, Emma, so your conversions are kind of you've already started with them, right? So the plan is to just be kind of
Yeah, so I've assembled what I want them to look like. So I've like blue tacked them so make sure they all fit. What I tend to do with painting is like I spray all the bodies first and the heads first and do all the arms separately. So I can make sure I can get everywhere.
Yeah.
So the next thing would be do is to prime them and then do all the little details and stuff and then look at bases. So
basing is like it's almost its own hobby. It's that you can go
Yeah.
so deep with it.
It's one of those things where it's just process of elimination and then you've just got to find the one that looks best for your model. So I'm going through that process at the moment, but I think the Martian Iron Earth ready aesthetic might be quite good.
I'm a fan of the two Martian basing materials.
Yeah, that's so nice.
They accidentally end up on far more of my armies than I'd like to admit. Oh, I think we've lost audio from Victor. What happened, buddy? He's sorry. He's just so we got two options now. We can either stare at him intently while he tries to get it working again, or we can just kind of talk amongst ourselves until he butts in with it working again.
Also, I mentioned earlier, I've got a box of Typhus, the model, sealed still. So yeah, and he's gone.
Yeah, he's probably gonna cut out of the call and rejoin back in because
Sure.
there you go.
Hello.
Am I
Yeah, we got
You're
you.
back.
We got
Yeah.
you.
I know.
in a completely different discussion during those seconds?
I am very excited, Emma, to see what you do with Typhus. Very, very excited because it's just a fucking cool miniature.
So nice. I don't think I'll have the little locust things on the backs. I think they look a little bit weird.
Yeah, I think
The model
in general,
overall,
like, I love Death Guard. That's why I'm gonna start collecting them. But a lot of times they're a bit over the top. Like whenever I get to Mortarion, I highly doubt I'm gonna have all the chains dangling down from him.
It's like when I did my Great Unclean one, I didn't include all the Nurglings because it was just like it felt just distracting. You know, it's almost like your eye can't take in that much shit at once. And you know, I'm a firm believer in the sort of less is more philosophy anyway. Like that's generally my painting approach. Is very less is more. But I think Nurgle's one of those rangers that kind of sometimes comes a cropper of that. Maybe they chucked too many things in there, and maybe just stripping it back a bit would.
So I'm happy to have more stuff than less. So it means I don't have to use all the stuff. I can save it for another because I like kit bashing and conversion products.
It goes back to what we were saying earlier, isn't it? About like everything that you don't use on a kit ends up becoming great conversion fodder for the next
This
one.
is it, yeah. And all the Nurgle, like the sprues and the kits are just they're very generous with what they give you, and there's a lot of ways you can build it.
Yeah.
But
I think
in regards to what what I was about to say before I cut out, and what Bone Shredder just wrote, like the basing is the most undervalued part of your hobby, and that's last week I spent a lot of time thinking about how I was going to do bases on my Death Guard.
Yeah.
A lot of videos were watched, and I'm going to do the.
I mean,
rolling
and even just like small things, like when I'm painting an entire army, for example, I'm not going to sit there and do bespoke bases on every single one, because for me personally, that's too much of a time investment for where I'm kind of at right now, like where and how I can commit to painting. But one of the really small things that I've done that's just improved my army is instead of just texture painting and then like dry brushing and washing the texture paint and just calling it done, what I'll do now is texture paint the base, and then I'll add some kind of aggregate, whether it be, you know, a gravel or pieces of slate or sand or flock or, you know, something that is a particle of some kind, and I'll add a couple of tufts. And that's like a tiny little extra amount of time. It maybe makes the base go from taking, 10 minutes to 12 minutes or something. It's like a really small investment of extra time. But the bases just look so much better for that one tiny little thing, you know?
Yeah, and like I wrote in the Discord as well, but like my Death Guard army, it's not. I'm not going to say poorly painted by my standards, but it's going to be, like I've said, like Death Guard. You can excuse yourself quite a lot by doing like base coats, agrax, and then a few highlights.
Yeah.
And fleshy bits, and basically be done. And like that, for me, it's a good tabletop standard.
Like it's not going to look shit if you do that. That's kind of the point, isn't it? It's, it's not going to be the best thing you've ever painted, but you're not going to be embarrassed of it.
Yeah, and then if I spend a bit extra on the basis, it will complement it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And you were talking about like getting a scenic roller, weren't you? And actually doing like
Yeah, for sure.
some patterns.
I spent the week looking at different types of polymer clay and trying to compare. And
Just one thing to watch for. I meant to tell you this when we were talking about it in Discord. But one thing to really watch for though is if you pre-bake the polymer clay and then stick it to the bases, as it's drying out, sometimes it can curl. So you're going to want to probably do a bit of research into which polymer clays are the least likely to do that.
Yeah. Or I'm leaning into doing the classic thing of spending more money to do less effort and just do green stuff and be safe.
Yeah.
Green slap it directly on the basis.
For all of the shortcomings of green stuff, when it's good, it's fucking good, isn't it? Right. So that would be Fonzie next, actually. What's coming up? What's about to happen?
Well, hopefully playing a lot more 40k and some Death Guard things when I eventually get more models. I have 2 finished at the moment, but I fucking love Nurgle.
Well, two and a half. Your Demon Prince is about 50% done.
Yeah. Well, but I painted. But yeah. I will have all my HQs done, so that's something.
Which kind of sucks because that means now you've just got troops to paint.
And a lot of Terminators and that.
A lot of Terminators.
I like them.
Yeah, Terminators are pretty chill to paint, to be fair. My coming up, my what's coming up is kind of unsurprising because again, you're gonna see a lot of it in content. A lot of it is going to be lent to content. Something that's probably not going to make it into a video, but I'm actually really hyped for is Leaky Cheese, the popular modeling and Forge World specialist YouTuber, commissioned me a while back to do a squad of word bearers for him. But Leaky Cheese being the type of guy that he is, he wanted to kind of custom build them all with Forge World parts. And he's put all these like custom prayer papers on them and shit. They're like barely recognizable as being original miniatures at this point. You know, they're very heavily kind of kit bashed from different things. And he wanted to do all of that in advance and then send them to me for me to just do the painting on. So I've been kind of really excited for it for a while, but I've also been waiting for him to do the building on it. And then it's just maybe just within reach. Is this the right one? Nope, that's the wrong one. Hang on, I think I can get it. I bought specifically for this job a bottle of this, which is Chimera's Oxide Red paint. If you're not familiar with this paint, it's very similar to Wordbearer's Red, but it goes on with this like really flat, super high coverage kind of application. And I've done
the dark aluminum of red.
Yeah, it's the dark aluminium of red, sure. And I started doing a little bit of experimenting with this paint, and I'm so fucking hyped to paint some word bearers with it, because all my word bearers were done with the GW word bearers paints, which whilst they look nice, they're really not the easiest paints to work with, considering that word bearers red is essentially an oxide red. Like, this is, you know, the pigment that is used in the GW one as well. The coverage of the GW one is really not that great. It's quite hard work getting your word bearers looking nice with it. So I've got this custom squad of word bearers that I'm going to get to do some kind of new stuff with that I've not done on word bearers before, and it'll be nice to kind of go back to a colour scheme that I'm very familiar with, but take a fresh approach to it, a new outlook, and hopefully make something very cool for Mr. Leaky Cheese. And then, much like Mr. Fonzie, I also have a Primaris Chaplain on bike coming, courtesy of one of my YouTube viewers, Witch King, who has sent it to me purely because he wants to see a painting video on it. So he said, I'll send you one if you'll make a video on one. And I said, I'll make a video on one if you send me one. And with that agreement, there will be one arriving in the post, and I'm going to make a video on it, which is going to be really interesting because it's going to be for my Angels Argentum. So I've got to kind of somehow figure a way to get that really reflective silver into a chaplain color scheme, and I haven't got a fucking clue how I'm going to do it.
I'm sitting and debating whether I should do the bike in the chapter color rather than the chaplain color.
So the only idea I've had at this stage is everywhere that a bone appears on the miniature, instead of doing the bones in bone colours, do them in that really reflective chrome silver.
But the only bone part is the skull on this one.
Exactly. So what the fuck are you gonna do? It's like, that was the first idea I come up with. Like, I wasn't looking at the box art, but I was like, oh, just swap all the bone out for silver. That'll look fucking neat. And then I looked at the box art again, and it's like, not gonna
Maybe
work.
you could just like bling it up and do it on the alloys, so make the alloys really shiny and reflective, like it's some sort of upgrade.
Or hubcaps.
Yeah, hubcaps, yeah.
Somebody give this lady the Painter of the Year award, because that is fucking brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. I wonder if I could convert spinners onto his bike.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I've got some of those I've got some of those Grim lights. Have you ever seen Grim lights?
Yeah.
the little battery operated magnetic sort of wire lights. So I can do the neons. The neons is fine. That's covered.
Just do Pick My Ride.
Yeah.
It's Chaplin.
Yeah.
I mean, you have. It looks like one of the sprues, right? That's the hubcap.
Hey
For one
Anna,
of the-
welcome to the stream.
There you go.
So there's an interesting question then. What would a Chaplin have? What would Exhibit put into the boot of a Chaplin's car on Pimp My Ride?
I mean, he does have a ride going for him, so in general, like I'm probably leaning to doing the traditional Chaplin, and then the bike
In chapter colours.
style.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
if your chapter colors is bling like crazy, maybe that's an approach.
Yeah, but then you see my bikes have all got red fairings. So because the rider is obviously already silver, I didn't want to do the bike entirely silver. So the bikes...
Okay. Do you put spoilers on the back? Do you green stuff some spoilers on the back of the bike?
We're heading into Fast and the Furious kind of territory here,
Yeah.
aren't we? We're getting dangerously close. Right, folks, I'll tell you what. Those of you in the chat, I know there's not a ton of you, but we are going to now start answering your questions. So we're going to move through to the very last part of the cast. This, if it was, as I said, a one-on-one cast, this would be the mailbag section. But what we're going to do is actually, instead of the mailbag, we're gonna do a little AMA, a little four-way AMA. So if you've got questions, folks, this is the section for them. It's the mailbag. Mailbag. Woo. Easy. Do you know what? Those scene transitions.
Is that all the transitions?
Yeah, I was so nervous
Nice.
about them, and I think they've actually just all worked. I think they've actually just all happened properly. I may have been a little bit too quick on that last one. I may have cut off the very last smidge of audio on that last one, but I think we did it. So there were first of all, while everyone else in the chat is thinking if they have any questions to ask, there were a couple of questions that came in from Bone Shredder Gaming that I think we should probably take a look at first of all, just while people kind of figure out what they want to ask. So the first one was, you talked earlier about how for Magic you just have to buy new cards if your prior deck gets nerf hammered, versus Wargaming where you have to buy and build new models. What effect do you think that has? So the kind of amount of investment, I guess, being so different. You know, Magic cards are not really a thing that you have much personal attachment to, whereas your miniatures are. So when your list is affected by a nerf, it's obviously a lot more high impact in Warhammer. How do we think that affects people? Hey Goomba, welcome to the stream.
So, I'm sorry, like we mentioned earlier, like a Magic card, like if it's unaltered or whatever, it's a playing piece, like in your deck.
Yeah.
But like the purpose of miniature, it's so much more than a playing piece. It's something you've poured hours into, you built, you painted, maybe thought of lore to it or whatever it is. So it's so much more than just a playing piece, and that's the main difference for me, at least.
I think
Like I wanted.
Yeah, I think for me, if like I don't know how. So I'm familiar with the way Magic cards are banned in terms of that game. I don't know how it really works in Warhammer, but if there is a case where they do ban a miniature or nerf it in a way where it's unplayable, you kind of just have a cool model as a display piece instead.
Yeah.
So you still have some usage for it. Similar with Magic cards, like if a card gets banned in a particular format, you can use it in another format and just use it elsewhere. It's all about mileage, right? In your purchasing.
like, I can definitely understand why, if you're just a competitive tournament player, if that's your only angle to the game, and one of your play pieces gets nerfed to the point that you couldn't use it anymore, then you bought that entire army just as play pieces, and you probably are less invested in how they're painted and what prior work has gone into them and that kind of thing. So I can get how that would feel like a big deal to people in that sense, but I also think that that's kind of the nearest analog to Magic, where you just buy a new play piece and quickly chuck some paint on it and it doesn't really matter.
If you're highly competitive, especially in Magic, you kind of have to accept that these cards may get banned at some point because you're doing the most busted thing. Not to be discouraging, but you kind of have to take that as a hit. Like, I'm doing this super busted thing. How long can I do it? Okay, this card's banned, nerfed, whatever. I'll do the next busted thing.
If you want to live on a razor's edge, you might eventually fall off, right?
Yeah, this is it. And if you just want to win all the time and do the most optimal thing, I think you just have to take that risk. I don't think you can have a middle ground.
David, any thoughts on this?
I think so. Like, the secondary market really interests me in games. But I've worked for a lot of Magic companies. I'm very close with my local game store, which is 7 City Collectibles.
Yeah,
that's my shout out.
Yeah, shout out to Barney. Actually, me and Barney might be doing some work together fairly soon. So they're definitely a store worth a shout out.
So I've seen like a lot of the secondary market for both games. The nice thing about Warhammer is, like, I don't know, suppose your tactical squad gets nerfed in 2 years. That tactical squad, if you wanted to resell it, will have value to someone. Like, someone will still want that because it's a tactical squad. With Magic, it's a bit less, like, I think, like, the secondary market's a bit different. Like, for example, I guess, like, in Magic, like, I like the cards I own. My cube is, like, nice versions, nice art, nice foils. And, like, there's the story, like, I've got cards in my cube that aren't the best card, but they're interesting. And I think, like, what, like, about nerfs and stuff is, like, it's about what you're looking for and being really sure you know what you're about. And that's hard. Like, you might get into competitive Warhammer and decide, oh, I don't really like playing for 9 hours a day at tournaments. That's too grueling for me. But just, like, I think doing your research and, like, being aware of, like, the secondary market, like, just because your army isn't good to you, it might be good to someone else. Like, there's a lot of, like...
Well, I think Warhammer kind of has that unique thing as well of, like, you can... Even if your miniature is, like, fucking caked in paint, even if it is, really objectively badly painted, you can strip miniatures so effectively. Whether they're plastic, metal, or resin, you can strip them so effectively now that you can bring them back to good as new plastic. So if you want to resell miniatures after they've been nerfed, as long as you don't mind doing the work to bring them back to a good saleable condition, you will get not much less than retail when you go to sell them back. Like a 30 quid squad, you'll probably still be able to get 18 to 20 quid for on eBay if you completely strip it and you make sure it's not full of mold lines and shit like that. Because people actually want to buy miniatures that are already built and assembled, so they don't have to fucking build and assemble them. Whereas, like, in Magic the Gathering, a card can literally be banned, and the impact that can have is it could be, like, worth $100 on Monday and literally 10 cents on Tuesday. And so you don't have the option of offloading it. You just have lost you've just lost $100. That's all that's happened there. There's nothing you can do to stop it. And that never happens with Warhammer. What you spent on it, you can always, if you are willing to take the appropriate actions, you can always get back at least 60-70% of what you spent on it. 100% of the time.
Which is pretty good. Like, a common comparison for Magic and, like, the expense of the game is, like, golf. Like, you have to have, like, the right golf clubs and, like, you need the right card to compete, etc. And, like, Warhammer, like, your stuff is always worth something to someone. Like, the set, like, the box of the value of a box of Imperial Guardsmen is never going to really decrease. They're never going to get cheaper. So I think that's, like, a big thing about, like, getting nerfed. Like, it's not the end of the world if your army gets nerfed. Like, someone will want it as long as you, like you said, like, you do the appropriate steps.
Yeah, it's definitely fairly low impact. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah. And also, like, from my general perception after being back like, of course there are bad units, but like I said earlier as well, the worst unit, like, it's not, the scale isn't Euro to draft chaff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's way
The scale
closer than
is like Jace Beleren to Jace Architect of Thought. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, it's both are pretty similarly okay. You know, there are going to be times when one is good, one is better than the other, but they're both pretty similarly decent cards that
And of
will
course.
that will turn up a lot.
People who are cutting edge will want one or the other, of course, but like for most people that play it on a more casual friendly level, that
Yeah, and even down
Probably
to things like the
fine.
Age of Sculpts and stuff like that. You know, I've got, for example, my Terminators are the Assault on Blackreach Terminators. They're not the best sculpts, but you know, once they're painted nicely, they'll still fucking look good. It doesn't matter. So another question from Bone Shredder, which again is another decent one, on the reception of rules changes. Obviously, there was a lot of furore in the community recently about some of the rules changes. More frustration because of the higher barrier to re-entry. So, like, is it a problem? Is it a problem that if your army from 10 years ago still exists, you still have the miniatures? You want to get back into the game, but you find that your 10-year-old army isn't viable anymore, and you've got to buy a bunch of new miniatures. Is that a problem? Is it a problem to have to even replace a squad and have to buy new miniatures? These are things that kind of, it's part and parcel of playing collectible games. You know, not all games can be like chess, where once you have your 16 pieces either side of the board, you have a chess set. Competitive games, you know, in order to keep them competitively interesting, and even if we're talking about casual competition, even if we're talking about just, you know, two friends wanting to have a battle for bragging rights, things have to change in order to keep people engaged. If it stays the same forever, then you solve it, and once it's solved, you walk away, right? It's like a Rubik's Cube. So,
I mean, yeah, the low-hanging fruit answer to this is if you're playing Xenos, it's still the same models, but
it's true. It's true. Your 2005 Eldar army will probably contain almost entirely miniatures that are still considered current lines. That's not. Oh, David's gonna go and fetch us some Eldar Oldhammer now, I bet.
Yeah, but like I said, also.
There we go.
Yep, there you go.
Oh, yeah.
That's a beautiful example.
Oh, I remember those.
Yeah, I had them in metal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just remember that time. Metal models.
But this is kind of the thing, is, you know, these frustrations in the community about rules changes meaning that you need to replace models. I'll be honest, like, as Magic players, and I say this, you know, I don't play Magic anymore. The other three people in this chat still play, but as Magic players, I think we can all say that it almost seems like it's verging on entitled, right? To Magic players, for the community en masse to, like, get really fucking upset about having to buy new miniatures because stuff in their army became bad. Like, we're so used to it as Magic players, and we're so used to not having that cushion as well of, you know, of there being any kind of retained value. Like, if a card gets banned out, it's just the value's tanked on it. If you bought it when it was good and then it gets banned out, like, you have just lost money. There's nothing you can do about it.
And especially considering, like, I'm not exactly sure it is now, but like the standard is one of the largest Magic formats and has been the largest for a long time.
It's the one they push the most.
Is that cards get recycled.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would never want that sort of thing for Warhammer, but it sets the tone in quite a different way.
Mm.
God, imagine if you could only play with the latest 2 years released models. That would be something.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, we kind of have a comparative in Warhammer with the Legends mechanic. What essentially, for those of you that aren't aware, what Legends basically means is that whatever the last datasheet that was printed for that miniature is, that's the datasheet now. They're never going to revise it. They're never going to give it a new datasheet. So it's special rules and its stats are never going to change again now. And that's essentially their way of saying we no longer support this miniature. but we acknowledge that you may own it and we don't want you to not be able to use it. So I think the way it works, and I might be wrong here, but I believe you can't play anything that's got legend status in a tournament, but for casual play it's just kind of check with your opponent, and that's because they're no longer balancing it for the game. So if it got took out at a point where it was really fucking good, it could end up too good, for example.
But also, like, how old is the newest model that got added to the Legends?
Oh, I couldn't even tell you.
But it has to be over a decade, right?
Probably, yeah. But in all truth, I do think that the frustrations when it comes to miniatures, no longer being good, or specific units no longer being good, I get it, because as we've said several times during this episode, like, you put so much more into a miniature than you put into a Magic card. There's a lot of you in that model before it ever touches the table, and so I get why it's frustrating, but turning that frustration into, baying for blood and shouting at Games Workshop and getting really pissed off about it, for people like us as Magic players, it kind of does look a little bit silly, because we go through worse de rigueur as part of Magic the Gathering. It's just so normal for Magic.
Well, there's the flip side as well, where there's been outcries to the point where changes happen. Look at the first Blood Marines. Like, people kicked up a huge stink about those, and then that rule changed.
Yeah, like, so why are they just so obsolete now?
It kind of works both ways. Like, there are going to be points where something goes wrong, but circumventing that and just outputting it onto the internet is not the answer, because
Firstborn Marines being good again now is like fucking the coolest thing ever to me.
It's a cool flavor win, right? It rewards you for having these super old models that some people coming back into the game might want. The end of the day, this is going to sound really harsh, but Games Workshop are here to make money, so they're going to keep continuing to do stuff to make money.
Yeah.
And rules changes are a part of that.
At the end of the day, if they did everything that we moan about, we probably wouldn't continue to have the game, because it just wouldn't be profitable.
Yeah, this is it. And at what point they're going to keep releasing new models and new rules, because they're a business, they want to make money. And if they just stop that and the game just stagnates, there would be no Warhammer anymore. There'll be nothing else to do. Yeah, and that's the worst outcome, I think, for the game. And
like, it's a common game design thing a lot of time. If you were to give the community everything they cry about, it would probably be a pretty shit game in the end.
And I always think people who shout the loudest are most heard, and they're also the people that are just never going to be pleased. If one thing is solved that they're happy about, there'll be something else that they'll moan about, because it's just this constant, trying to. You can't please people who will never be pleased, so why give it the time? I think is the point I'm making.
Go ahead, David.
I think, like, Warhammer does what's called the Escher Stairway better than any game I've seen. And the Escher Stairway is like the concept of, like, we're going to change the power level, but we're going to do it in different ways. Mm-hmm. And like Tactical Marines being good now is like Warhammer's Escher Stairway of this unit that was good before, was like bad, is now good. And it's like, yeah, like, it sucks when I played, like, when the Tyranid players who played in 4th had 9 Carnifexes, and then 5th came along and they were awful, and you wanted the next thing, but then they might be good again. Like, Warhammer, like, the stuff is, like, more eternal.
Yeah.
Like, and also, like, you think who you're playing with. Like, if you're playing with people, if you're worried about, like, having the most competitive list or stuff being unplayable, then your expectations probably actually aren't, you're not being true to yourself. You actually probably are more concerned about, like, being competitive, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, as we've alluded to, I'm competitively minded. I want to have, like, a competitive list,
but that internal honesty is kind of key to being happy with that thought process, isn't it?
Yeah. And, like, I think that, and I'm going to soapbox a bit now,
here we go,
like, the competitive player gets, like, a bad rap, and rightly so, as often are in these things. But, like, as long as a competitive player is honest with themselves and puts themselves in the correct arena, and is honest, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like everyone should do what they like in the hobby. That's what makes the hobbies we like good. Like they're appealing to everyone. Like, yeah, like I think that it is frustrating. It's also a lot about like, I think like looking at Warhammer as like the game, like 40K as the game, is like really interesting. Like now it's as user friendly as it can be. It's very easy to pick someone up and go, you don't need to take your ballistic skill from 7. It just hits on a 3-up. That's really easy to explain.
Yeah.
And like, if we have to lose out on some things that people liked in the past that are like, oh, I really like the game being complex, they're probably not acting in the game's best interest.
Absolutely.
They're acting in their own interest.
Yeah.
Like, complexity doesn't always equal a win in game design. Like chess, as you mentioned, is very popular. Obviously, in like very complex and stuff. Like you want people to be able to pick up and play because you need that. Otherwise, as Emma said, like your game doesn't grow. Like you need people to be able to just like walk into Games Workshop, be demoed a game that's relatively easy to understand.
Right. Well, I suppose the difference there, the comparative with chess, is that chess isn't a game that has a business built around it. It's a game that some businesses produce as a product, but it isn't a game that has an entire ecosystem around it. Whereas, you know, whether we're talking about Warhammer or Magic the Gathering or, you know, a lot of the more sort of new wave of board games like Zombicide or Blackstone Fortress, that kind of thing, there is an ecosystem around them that they're trying to draw you into in order to allow their business model to operate. And complexity in game design is a barrier to entry. It's a huge barrier to entry. Yep. And the way a lot of these businesses survive is new player uptake. Like that's a lot of what makes these things viable as businesses, because at the end of the day, if you're a new player, it doesn't matter if you don't stick around. They still got all of that initial outlay in you setting up, right? So like money was still made. So they have to, in order to have an effective business that continues to make money and survive and then can do cool shit that all of us that are long in the tooth are really happy about, they have to have things set up in such a way that is attractive to new players.
Yeah, and I mean, chess hasn't had a patch in centuries, so... You know.
yeah, exactly. Chess is due some DLC, isn't it?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is down to there is a subsection of Warhammer and the Magic community, or just a subset of people that just like to feel really, really smart. Mm-hmm. So they like these really complicated things because they feel really smart for doing it. Whereas that's completely fine. You can feel really smart about it, but it's just having that barrier to entry. You want more people to play the game, right? You know, it's a really cool thing just to see. It's been great since like lockdown has happened and everyone's just picking up Warhammer because it's something to do. They can do at home while they're on furlough.
Yeah.
It's just seeing it more accessible is really nice.
And you're actually just like allowed to do it without having to be, you know, super good at it or super smart or whatever.
This is it. And like so I came back into the hobby recently, and I was into it like 5-6 years ago, very on and off. I've been into it as a kid, but came in and out of it over my life. What's the great thing about it now is I'm seeing more females play it, which when I first played was not a thing at all. Like I was the only girl that went to Games Workshop, and I would always get looks because it's like, are you buying for your boyfriend or something like that? But yeah, it's just the fact that it's more accessible for all genders, and you know, it's really great to see.
Yeah, you gotta love it. You gotta love it.
Last week when I was at my gaming club, like was a parent there with his like 10-ish-year-old little daughter playing the game.
It's fucking really great. Yeah, it's so nice to see. One of the things I love most about, like, I don't go into the GW store that often, you know, just purely because I come at the hobby from so many different angles that I don't need to actually enter a GW store every time I want stuff, because I don't use GW products for everything that I do. But one of the things that really makes me happy is pretty much every time I walk into a GW store, there's at least a parent with a kid holding hands, showing them around the hobby. Yeah. And like, can any of us say, if like, I don't know if any of us have children, but could any of us say if we had children that we would want to take them into an LGS and show them Magic in that same way? Like, would there isn't that kind of, I don't know, it doesn't feel like the kind of thing that you could kind of get a kid excited about, and you know.
And because if you like in a non-COVID environment, a lot of LGS's stock starter decks, which are these little 30 card decks that you can pick up, and they're for people who are curious about Magic but don't want to spend any money on it. And you teach them the game with these decks. You put two of them together, of different colors, and they make a 60 card deck. And you can teach people the game. And if for instance, if I had children, that's something I would do. I'd just be like, here's how to play this game. And if they're not into it, that's completely fine. I'm not going to throw that onto them because it's something I do. But just at least opening and normalizing it is a good way to do. I think Warhammer's more interesting because there's models, there's more of an aesthetic to it compared to Magic.
Mm-hmm.
And the painting aspect is more engaging than just like beating your son or daughter at a game of Magic.
Sure. Right, so
like sorry for dragging you on, but when I worked at the Magic shop, like usually there would come like either people in charge of youth centers and stuff, and like we generate a lot of bulk in general. Like you take in collections and you add 10% of it to your stock, and the rest is like sitting in boxes. So we just like give cards away by the kilo, and like they appreciate it a lot. A lot of kids come in and we just throw bulk at them, and they're super happy about that as well.
Yeah,
like, I think getting a kid engaged in any of those sort of activities is great. Really, no matter the activity.
But Magic's really good because it teaches basic maths as well.
Yeah,
and to an extent, English, like you have all these flavor texts, you learn all these different kind of words that you don't often hear. So like I found out what ineffable meant the other day because it's on a planeswalker, and I'm like, that's a really cool word. Like I'm gonna start using that. It teaches you like these basic arithmetic as well.
One of the things I think about any of these nerd culture hobbies is that, you know, introducing kids to them is not only is it so beneficial to like the development of a child, but you know, I'm gonna really sound like a fucking old man here, and there's just not really any other way I can do it, but
you always do.
We live in a world where like kids, if they're not kept occupied, a lot of the trappings of the modern world are quite dangerous for a child now, and I think we all know that. You know, we all see it in the news. We all maybe have had family members affected by it, shit like that. It ain't the nicest world for kids to grow up in right now, and giving them hobbies like this that keep them occupied whilst teaching them useful skills, whilst helping them grow their confidence, whilst giving them access to a social circle of like-minded people, that's a really fucking powerful, beautiful thing you can do for a developing human. And like, so it always, to me, seems really important that these games have some kind of attractive method of entry for kids. Even if they're not necessarily fully aimed at kids, just something to kind of make kids go, oh, when I'm old enough, I want to play that. You know, them Magic cards look real good. Just anything like that.
Yeah, you can extend it to D&D as well. It's like if you have a kid that has confidence issues, you can introduce like role play just to make them comfortable around other people in like social environments. There's just so many ways you can go about it, and just introducing these kids to like D&D, Warhammer, and Magic. It's just a really good stepping stone.
Absolutely, yeah. So
I think it's also.
Go on.
I mean, I was going to like say that as Stuart knows, when I started dating the love of my life, Michelle, she was like, "Oh, I don't like games," and I was like, "This is the weirdest thing I've ever heard." Oh, you're smart, like thin smart people. Like, and games are fun, so that you must not have played any. And as we spoke, and she was like, "Yeah, I've played Monopoly." I'm like, "Okay, these aren't games. These are like, this is Overwatch. This is World of Warcraft. This is Magic. This is a Nintendo Switch." Like, and like watching her develop like through, like even like as an adult, and like I think we've all probably developed as adults through. I'm doing a podcast with two strangers and Stuart, who's the strangest of us all. But,
I'll take it.
Like, it's awesome, and it's like a really nice thing, like, of the hobby, and like, I think it's great to see that, like, you can teach. Like, Emma, my girlfriend, relates a lot to, like, when she went to Games Workshop to buy things for herself, it was like, "Oh, is this for your boyfriend?" And she'd be like, "No, it's for me." What an idiot! Like, And like she said, like it was very. We went to a GP together, which is a big. For people who don't know, it's a big, like, huge Magic event with thousands of people. And she was like, "Wow, this is amazing! This is like the coolest thing ever. Why is this card worth £2,000?" And it's like, oh well, like
That's a different story.
we can talk about that another time. But it's like, I think it's really cool, like getting to see someone discover games in like a later point in life.
That
Like,
wide-eyed wonderment.
Yeah, like this is a Tyranid, and she was like, "That's the coolest thing ever!" Like,
Yeah.
are these any like? It's awesome, and
I feel a deep sense of human connection with that spiky insectoid monster.
Yeah,
There's
it's
definitely
like-
something you have to watch with Tyranid players, okay? They know something we don't.
yeah, I'm pretty. I thought I was the lizard brain. Yeah, it's awesome to see, and like I think that back to the original question that we probably segued light years from, like if the games now can get more people in because you're slightly inconvenienced, you need to kind of get over yourself a bit.
Absolutely.
Like-
yeah. Not in
I
a
think-
not in a calling anyone out kind of way, but just in
Not at all.
you know, just
But
in a
like-
like that's an important step in your personal development is to learn to sacrifice a small amount for yourself in order to benefit a huge amount to a broader range of people.
Yeah, like I used to get upset when I didn't reprint Man Leak in every set of Magic.
Yeah,
and
me
I
too, man.
realised,
Me too.
Well, maybe the game's better if it's about creatures. than
Yeah,
more
yeah.
people.
Maybe casting spells is fun for some people. I don't know.
Like
Weirdos.
I actually think this is where Warhammer has benefited more recently than Magic. Warhammer's done such a better job of actually like captivating new players with their relatively simple but not powerful thing. Like I think it's very easy to get people hooked onto like
On
high
power,
power level.
yeah, it is.
It's like, oh, well, I've just picked up my Magic. I've just picked up Magic, and I can make Uro and Omnath. Well, I don't really need to think about that.
I mean, let's
So-
be realistic here, right? If you are developing Magic sets, I don't think it's a big leap to say that developing powerful cards is probably quite a lot easier than developing cards that are thematically interesting or that are,
Yeah.
you know, captivating to people on a deeper level than just, you know, the surface power aspect. The accusation that is being thrown around in Wizards of the Coast direction at the moment a lot is that game designers gotten lazy, and I think you have to, at least on some level, be compelled to agree when you look at how much game designers leaned towards power rather than cards being thematically deep or mechanically interesting, or, you know, it's become so much of a thing that the chase cards in a set are not. I mean, you know, take a look at a card like Snapcaster Mage, for example. It's obviously a powerful card, but in today's world, is it even that good anymore?
Not in modern.
But
Playable, but it's not the best option anymore.
at the time that Snapcaster Mage came out, it wasn't its power level that made every single person look at it and go, "That's so fucking cool." It was the fact that it was so mechanically interesting. It was the fact that it allowed you to pick which spell had flashback, which that set was the first time we had that. That set was the first time where we had any cards where we had agency over which spells gained flashback. Prior to that, flashback was just baked into the card. If it wasn't on the card, the spell didn't get flashback. Yawgmoth's Will notwithstanding, which is not really the same thing.
Yeah.
And that depth of mechanical interest, the number of play avenues that card opened up, was what made it so fucking good. Fast forward to the modern era where we're talking about Oko, which is obviously the card we have to make a comparison to, and it's like, yeah, this is really fucking good because it costs 3 mana, destroys your opponent's best thing, you know, generates beneficial resources for you. It's just, you know, it's just 3 mana. This does everything that I need a card to do. Fucking great. Yeah, everyone's going to play it. It's like, plus there was all the internet thirst of the fact that literally every single person wanted to fuck Oko.
Yeah.
I think like flexibility is big. Like, I think that's actually another thing Warhammer has with like the expanding range now. Like, yeah, as a Xenos player, it sucks that my models are from 2004. Yeah, that's not great. But like, I definitely believe in the direction Games Workshop are going.
Mhm.
By like, if they just have to hard reset everything for like a new age of the game, that's a good thing. And you can still play your models. Like, if they release some cool new Super Mega Dark Reapers, that's cool. I'll still have my old ones. I'll play both.
And the thing is, even when we talk about resetting and shit like that, if the old version was that fucking good, people will keep it alive. Warhammer Fantasy still has a huge community, and they play. I think it's called like Warhammer Legacy. I actually know what the name is. I'm just making that up.
Old World something.
But it's
like Ninth Age and stuff like that.
Yeah, but what they've essentially done is just accumulated all of the best rules from Warhammer Fantasy and turned them into this one new amalgamated edition. And a community keeps it alive, much like how Commander used to be in Magic the Gathering, where it was just a community-maintained thing before Wizards decided to stick their claws in it because they realised they could make money off it. And the same thing is true of Horus Heresy, for example. Horus Heresy it's not an officially supported rule set anymore. They still make miniatures for it, but they're not really doing any actual updates to the game itself, but it still has a fucking huge, successful community and a massive fan base and popularity. And so, you know, if these hard resets have to happen, like it doesn't break anything for anyone. It doesn't ruin anything. You still get to play your game. You just have to look a little harder for opponents, maybe. But you know,
or even Warhammer Epic or whatever it's called.
Epic 40k. Yeah, it was called. It was originally called Epic.
I remember Epic.
Yeah,
I had Epic.
And I think my understanding is that it has gotten a huge pickup due to like 3D printing and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's no official support at all.
Yeah, but like, you know, Epic I think has had. So there was Epic, which was in the 90s, and then there was Epic 40k, which was in the early 2000s, and then I don't think it ever got touched again after that, to the best of my knowledge. Yeah. So, you know, you're talking nearly 20 years old game that's been unsupported for that long. Necromunda's another great example. A lot of people just really prefer the original Necromunda to the remake in 2017. And there are a bunch of people out there that still play original Necromunda and don't use the 2017 rule set, you know?
Yeah. Or like I nagged on about, the Magic format I play the most is a super local one. Where we...
Yeah, it's very sort of like Sweden-centric, isn't it?
Yeah, or even Gothenburg-centric.
Really? Wow.
Highlander Gold, play it. It's the best.
But, yeah, this is kind of the thing, is that we've spent a lot of time on this question, but you know, the important thing to realize here is that what you are losing from change is generally subjective, and that what might feel like quite a big loss to you, in the grand scheme of things, may not actually be as big as you feel like it is. But it could also open up massive new opportunities and windows for other people to benefit from. So you know, when it comes to the feels bads and the backlash to changes, I think we just need to try and temper that a little bit with understanding. So next question in the chat, and I know Drawling has left now, but knowing Drawling as well as I do, he'll probably rewatch the part that he missed anyway, so I want to answer the question. Drawling asks, is a hot dog a sandwich? And I actually have what I think is a very clever answer to this, so I'm going to go last. Is a hot dog a sandwich, folks?
Sure, why not?
Oh, it is whatever you want it to be.
It doesn't matter. It's a good food, and it's a very good comfort food when you're feeling under weather.
We had hot dogs for dinner the other day. I'm actually a huge fan of the hot dog, but I also think that I can answer this question definitively. Okay. So, a sandwich is defined as food that is enveloped on both sides by bread. By two pieces of bread. Okay, so for something to be a sandwich, for something to be a sandwich, it has to be bread filling bread, right? We can all agree on that.
No. Open-ended sandwiches are sandwiches.
What the fuck's an open-ended sandwich?
Where you only have bread on one side. Like, that's the default sandwich.
You mean an open-faced sandwich?
Open-faced, yeah.
That's just
language
topped
barrier.
bread. That's just topped bread, man. Come on. It's not a
Bread,
sandwich.
butter, cheese, that's the default breakfast sandwich.
No, don't fuck around, Fonzie. Come on, don't fuck around. A sandwich is commonly accepted by most people as being bread-filling bread.
In the UK, maybe.
Alright, well, look, Drawling's from the UK, okay? I happen to know him in real life, so... Alright, look, here's what I think is the definitive answer. Sometimes when you buy a hot dog bun, it is scored, and the sausage sits in the score. That's not a sandwich. However, sometimes when you buy a hot dog bun, it's not cut at all, and you have to cut it yourself. If you cut it all the way through, then you've got bread filling bread, and then it's a sandwich. So maybe it's like Maybe it's like Schrodinger's sandwich. It can both be a sandwich and not a sandwich at the same time, just depending on how you cut it.
Or it could just be called a hot dog.
Yeah, or it could just be its own thing. Yeah. Or this question,
that's true.
Or this question could have just been
is horrible.
A very cleverly framed way to cause us all to argue. Maybe Dryling is actually a secret genius, and that's why he left before we answered. There were also a couple of comments that were worth noting. Goomba said that they've taken their kids to a Commander night at their local gaming store well before all of this, so that's good to know. It's good to know that my perception of Magic being kid friendly is perhaps a little inaccurate. And Mossy made the comment a little while back that the grim darkness of the 40th or 41st millennium is nicer than the current world, which is unfortunately kind of true. It's definitely a damning tale of current affairs when escaping to a world of absolute bitter evil darkness is preferable to focusing on reality, isn't it?
Yeah.
Pretty sad. But let's not go out on a sad note, because we've had a really fucking good time with this. I think. I hope everyone present has had fun with it. Sorry.
Yeah, great.
So look, we've been going for 2 hours and 20 minutes. It's been quite a long one, but we knew it'd be quite a long one with 4 of us. So let's wrap it up. Tradition dictates now that I mean, we've had 10 episodes. Does anything count as a tradition? But I'm gonna say tradition dictates that as we say goodbye to the audience and thank them all for watching, that we all do our silliest wave at the camera while I press the end stream button. So thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this community episode of My Big Fat Mouth. Oh, that's not fair. You can't use Scar. For those of you that are listening to this in audio format, Fonzie currently has his cat on his lap, and his cat is one of the most beautiful,
very fluffy cat.
Extremely fluffy cat. So, folks, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye for now.
Your cat is